Supervisors to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Bomke? Here. Mr. Cavalier?
Here.
Mrs. Maurer?
Here.
Mr. Milday? Ms. Sellers? Here. Mr. Snellings?
Here.
Mr. Thomas?
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'd like to welcome Kyle Haynes, who is the District Manager for the Tri-County City Soil and Water Conservation District, to the podium. For those of you that don't know, the Water Conservation District is a nonprofit that focuses on natural resource problems and solutions here in the area. They represent Stafford, Spotsylvania, King George, as well as the city of Fredericksburg. Thank you.
Thank you for your introduction, Chairman, and members of the board. It's a pleasure to be here today, and this presentation is essentially a summary of our accomplishments during the last fiscal year. And I think it's important to get an idea of what we're trying to achieve. So our mission is to provide leadership, education, and technical programs to assist all resource users to conserve, sustain, and improve soil and water resources. And we want to be recognized as the community leader in focusing action on establishing partnerships to achieve soil and water conservation. And this is a picture of our board of directors from last year, very integral part to essentially getting things done. And we have a slew of new directors, but we have two new directors in Stafford County, Mr. Jeff Adams and Mr. Mike Anderson, who are new dedicated Stafford County elected officials helping us achieve the work that we do. So we implement 3 programs to achieve our vision. We have an agricultural program, which has been our main focus since 1944, where we promote conservation farming practices through technical assistance and the implementation of the Virginia Agricultural Cost Share BMP program. We have an education program where we provide education to K through 12 youth, adults, and a number of outreach programs that assist in educating the citizens on watershed and water quality issues. Our new and expanding program is the Urban Residential Program, where we promote conservation practices through technical assistance and implementing the Virginia Conservation Assistance Program. So this is a summary of what was achieved during fiscal year 2015 in the agricultural program. We allocated $66,000 to cost share practices, BMP, or best management practices in the county. And that included livestock exclusion from waterways, which includes fencing, an alternate source of water, pipeline, a conservation plan, rotational grazing, and wells and pipelines to ultimately ensure that when the cattle are fenced out of the stream, that they have an alternate source of water to drink from, which improves water quality by preventing them from degrading the stream channel, from defecating the streams, and ultimately trampling and eroding the riparian buffer. Cover crops is another very significant BMP that we implement. It has the ability to prevent erosion by having a permanent vegetative or a semi-permanent vegetative cover throughout the year, which ensures soil health and ultimately reduces groundwater leaching. And nutrient management is our third tier of BMPs that ultimately improve the health of the watershed locally. By managing the nutrient allocations on a farm, you prevent an excess allocation of nutrients, which is a very integral part of the health of the watershed. And last year we provided support for over 1,500 acres of nutrient management plans. And collectively, these 3 practices ensure that sediment, nutrient, and bacteria are minimized and or prevented from getting into local watersheds. So to kind of transition from agriculture to education, we focus on education in the classroom and outside the classroom. And this is a picture of our education coordinator working with Stafford County, specifically at Stafford Middle School in this particular picture, going over stormwater pollution, wetlands and streams, and watershed management. And last year we reached over 300 students in the classroom. And we taught local Girl Scout troops, private school students, and homeschooled children as well. A major component of the educational program is the implementation of a MWEE, which is also known as a Meaningful Watershed Educational Experience. So this year we've actually been able to get into Stafford Middle School and establish a partnership and relationship with them to have in-classroom studies, analyze a watershed concept, and then have an actual real-world project. So this year they're working on assessing Accokeek Creek in the backyard of Stafford School, or Stafford Middle School. And the students go out there and they assess the water quality, they go through and pick up trash, and they identify and associate with natural resource and watershed concepts throughout the process, and then they reflect on what it is that they learned in the process. So we're looking at expanding those MWEEs throughout the school system in Stafford County. We also support the Youth Conservation Camp, where we provide funding for 2 campers every year to attend this week-long camp. This past year, we actually sent 2 students from Stafford County, Javion and Matt, who got to spend a week long at Virginia Tech in Blacksburg studying natural resources, working with professionals and teachers as well. And they go through with a cohort of around 70 kids, and they learn the full spectrum of natural resources, and they have an absolute blast in the time being. And they come back and do a presentation about what it is that they learned, and hopefully instilling that conservation ethic and natural resource concepts within the youth. And this year, if you have anybody that you know that might be interested, any high school student is eligible. Applications are due April 11th. The ENVIROTHON competition is another program in our education suite that ultimately provides an opportunity for high school students to get involved. And Stafford County actually has one high school, Stafford High School, that participates. And they go through a intensive registration process, training process, and then exposure to 5 different natural resource elements. And then they compete with regional or local, regional, and then ultimately at a state level of other teams throughout the state. So we help with the facilitation, the training, and ultimately the hosting of the event at both the local and the regional level. And last year, Stafford County placed 2nd in the region competition. Another new program last year was our Citizen Water Monitoring Grant Program. So this was a collaboration with DEQ and the Friends of the Rappahannock to get grant funding to help fund a concerned group of citizens to monitor Claiborne Run and Falls Run. And we have called the program the Fredericksburg Area Monitors for the Environment, also known as FAME. At this point, there are 16 members who rotate on a monthly basis to collect stream samples and then process that data in our office. And then they're able to establish kind of a training regimen that exposes them to science concepts, exposes them to the water quality monitoring management, and ultimately the analysis of the data. And then DEQ uses that data to then go towards their TMDL developments, so their total maximum daily load developments. And we're working in partnership with Stafford County as well, specifically the Public Works Department, on updating them on this type of data. And so you can see the pictures here where 2 high school students are collecting the data using the lab and or our office space in the bottom picture. And then the picture on the bottom left is a sample of what it looks like after you plate the water sample, use growing agents, incubate it, and then ultimately the results are analyzed. And the colonies of bacteria are represented as those little dots. And depending on how much bacteria levels there are, if you have a consistent level of bacteria over a certain amount of time, the red flag is raised, and then you look for a source of that particular problem. All right, and to kind of follow up on our vision of being leaders in the community, working towards collaboration and partnership, last year we hosted the local government breakfast, which I think some of you attended, and ultimately looking at ways in which to collaborate on a regional scale to focus on natural resource and water resource management issues through the lens of having multiple government agencies, staff, elected officials, and the district being able to discuss these types of regional scale problems across political boundaries. And we look to continue to do these collaborative type events going forward. This year we're actually going to have a strategic planning event, which will take the place of this, where we're going to look for input from staff and from local elected officials to provide input over our next 4 years of development. Another one of our events through the kind of education and urban residential transition is we have an annual tree seedling and rain barrel sale, where we get low-cost bare root tree seedlings from the Department of Forestry and provide them at a very, very reduced cost to the public. And we set up locations in Stafford and King George and City of Fredericksburg and Spotsylvania and sell them in bundles, mostly native plants, with the intention of providing conservation practices, educating the citizens on the benefits of installing trees and plants, and trying to provide a variety of different trees that are beneficial for urban residential properties and for farming properties. In addition, we also sell rain barrels and promote the practice and use of them for stormwater management. We do. It is going to be April 16th. Absolutely. My office is full of them. So. All right, and so finally, the urban and residential program historically was based upon locality staff calling the district and saying that there's a erosion problem, or there's a sediment problem, or there might be a nutrient problem in a pond, and we could provide recommendations and we could provide advice and suggestions and resources. But now we actually have the ability to provide a cost share program. So this Virginia Conservation Assistance Program mirrors the program that we offer for agriculture in the way that it reduces non-point source pollution by encouraging non-agricultural landowners to voluntarily implement these water quality practices. So we have a suite of best management practices available to local residents, private, public, and private, public, and residential. So really anybody that's interested in implementing a project, as long as it's non-regulatory, are eligible to apply for funding through a cost share program to implement one of these stormwater BMPs. And this was a collaboration from a collection of districts throughout the state, and then ultimately a grant was obtained from the DEQ to offer this for the next 2 years, available to any suite of citizens that are concerned, including schools, businesses, and so forth. So we're talking about best management practices like pet waste stations, impervious surface removal, conservation landscaping, rain gardens, bioretention, and so forth. And you can see a picture at the top. This is actually in Aquia Harbor, which shows a very significant urban or really residential stream bank erosion that's occurring from really years of high quantity volume of stormwater and a lack of a vegetative buffer along the stream. And then the picture below that shows an example of a rain garden. We have not figured out a solution yet for this top picture, but there's a number of different avenues that individuals that have these types of concerns and or issues on their property can take. And we now are looked at as a resource and a way in which funding can be obtained for the entire county at this point. So just want to kind of promote that, and we're looking at marketing and strategizing for this particular program going forward. And that's just kind of a brief summary of what's going on in Stafford County. A number of new initiatives, and we're very excited to continue to work with Stafford County, support the local government, and provide services for the citizens. And I just want to thank you for your continued support, and we really do enjoy providing the services that we do. And at this time, I'd take any questions or concerns or comments.
Ms. Sellers?
Going back to the scholarship, or not the scholarship, where they go to Virginia Tech. Can you give us
youth
a little
conservation
bit more?
camp? Yeah.
Yes, just kind of what you're looking for in the kids that apply, and
Yeah, all they have to do is display through an application that they have a genuine interest in pursuing and or learning about natural resources. So they don't have to have any accomplishments, they just have to have a genuine interest and display that through a writing sample.
Ms. Bobke?
Yeah, Kyle, I wanted to ask you, I know we had a meeting with, over at the school board office with one of the coordinators, and I think it's great that Stafford Middle School is doing the sample testings in a creek that's right outside their back door. Have we been able to expand any of those programs through the educational coordinator with the school division?
Yeah, they're looking at replicating that meaningful watershed educational experience at MWEE. That really is kind of a program that is mandated now from the state of Virginia as of 2014, that by the time a student graduates, they have to have had completed a MWEE experience. And so Friends of the Rappahannock and our agency are two of the only ones in the region that can provide the full spectrum services, but we also have the ability to teach teachers how to do these MWEEs. So we're actually implementing that large scale process of teaching teachers how to implement these programs and giving them advice, giving them resources in Spotsylvania County. And we're looking at replicating that same process in Stafford County by working with the teachers through the science coordinator specifically about how to replicate that on a large scale throughout the county.
Okay, because I knew he was very interested, but I haven't checked back with you on that. So, and you can meet Dr. Benson, the superintendent of schools. He can raise his hand. You can meet him on the way out.
Thank you very much, Meg.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Haynes, and congratulations on another successful year.
Thank you very much. And if you don't mind, just have one request from new elected director to say some closing comments, and then I'll
Sure,
move on.
absolutely.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
I'm Jeff Adams. I'm new to the Soil and Water Board, but I'm Mr. Snelling's appointment to the Ag PDR, and our farm personally is part of the PDR program. And what I'd like to say, and it's an editorial comment, I'm of the belief You can clean it up before it gets in the water, or you can clean it up after it gets in the water. It's just which pocket is the money going to come out of. And I've participated in many of these programs, and they are effective. I think, Mr. Snellings, you've even had a hayride on the farm one time and seen them. So, so that's just my 2 cents. It's, you know, you can pay me now or pay me later, as the commercial says.
Thank you, and thanks for your service. Okay, at this time, I'd like to welcome Marcy Parker of VDOT. I believe she has representative from Mega Projects to talk about an extension of the hot lanes.
I do.
Good deal.
Good afternoon. As you know, I'm Marcy Parker. I'm your VDOT district engineer. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to present to you today a short extension of the express lanes that will help alleviate some of the backups that citizens are currently experiencing at the southern terminus. We are having a public information meeting tomorrow night, so the presentation you see today will be the same presentation given tomorrow night. It will be at H.H. Poole Middle School between 6 and 8 p.m. if anybody's interested and can stop by. But I have with me today Susan Shaw. She's our Mega Projects Director, and she's going to start out with the presentation and then turn it over to me for the last couple slides that are more specific to some of our future projects. So, Susan?
Okay, thank you, and good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. Let me just talk a little bit about the history of the project and where the project is. Of course, you know it's right there at mile marker 143 near the Garrisonville Road exit. This is a partnership with our 95 Express partners. We're sharing in the costs. They're providing $25 million for the total $50 million estimated project cost. The lanes opened in December of 2014 and did provide new travel options. It was an extension of 9 miles to the south. And we currently have a northbound left slip ramp for people heading north in the morning, just north of Route 610. And then for southbound traffic, they enter just north of the exit there. What we've seen, and I'm sure you're very familiar with it, is in the morning we've got general purpose lanes that back up as people try to get into those express lanes, right, that start really south of the interchange there. And in the southbound, we have congestion that builds from points farther south, but there's a lot of weaving and merging that's going on relative to people getting in and out of those express lanes, especially as they kind of mix with traffic that's also wanting to get in and out of 95 at Garrisonville. And so our proposed project, while it's not a total solution, as Marcy indicated, but it is something that we do believe will make an improvement. It's a 2.2 mile reversible lane that will extend the express lanes towards the south. And it starts off it's in the median there, so it will continue south in the median, and then it will split and have a northbound segment and then a southbound segment. And these will carry drivers who want to continue on the express lanes in the southbound direction past the Garrisonville interchange before they have to merge with 95 general purpose traffic. And in the morning, it will allow people that want to get on the express lanes, that want to get on, they're coming from points farther south than Garrisonville, they'll be able to enter those lanes sooner. The project will be largely constructed in the median, and in addition to the pavement work that we're going to be doing, we'll be installing additional message signs, cameras, and other items that are associated with the operation of the reversible lanes. So the northbound traffic will be able to enter sooner. The existing left side entrance ramp will remain exactly like it is. So this will just be a new option that people will be able to enter in farther south. We'll have gates and all of that that's associated with that entry point, just like what we have with the current one today. On the southbound, people heading farther south beyond Garrisonville will be able to stay in the express lanes, get past that Garrisonville interchange before they have to merge back into 95 South traffic. And again, the existing flyover ramp will still be available, and the people that will be on that now will largely be limited to the people who are exiting at Garrisonville. This just shows some of our traffic volumes that we've seen, but we have a lot of heavy weaving that's occurring, and this will allow 641 vehicles that are coming from the south, plus the 274 vehicles from the Garrisonville ramps to access the express lanes during the AM peak hour. And that will just make it a lot easier. We won't have as much merging and weaving to get those people that are coming from the south to be able to get into the express lane sooner and get out of that general purpose traffic flow. In the reverse direction in the evening, it's even more dramatic. We have about 1,000 vehicles that are in the express lanes that want to continue south during the PM peak hour. So right now, they're going up over that flyover and kind of mixing with all that Garrisonville road traffic and then having to get back into the express lanes. So this will kind of separate those two flows. So we're looking for both a safety improvement as well as a reduction in congestion. Some of the other features that you should be aware of is one, all the construction is anticipated to occur within the VDOT right-of-way. Most of it's going to be in the median. There are no new toll gantries that are proposed. There won't be a separate toll charged for the 2.2 mile extension. There is a new sound wall that's proposed along the outer edge of the southbound general purpose lanes. Again, that is anticipated to be within VDOT right-of-way. And then we'll have these other design elements that'll be part of the project as well. And those are going to be, when we look at like sign supports and supports for overhead structures, we're going to look to make sure that those are far enough away from the 95 roadway proper so that we have room for additional improvements that are anticipated that could occur in a reasonable time frame. And so what are the benefits of this project? I mean, your problems on 95, all of them are not going to be solved with this project. But we do anticipate that we will see some significant improvements, some reduced delays for the general traffic in the morning peak hours, reduced delays for southbound express lanes traffic in the evening rush hour. These are ultimately resulting in some safety improvements because we have less weaving and merging, and anytime you have that, you're just going to have that more opportunity for accidents to occur. And then it's an overall increase in capacity by adding this additional lane. Just to let you know our general anticipated schedule. So unlike the express lanes where our private partner, they actually procured their own design build consultant, this is more of an equal partnership, and VDOT is actually doing our own procurement. It's going to be a competitively bid design build. We've actually already issued what we call our request for qualification statement. We've received 3 statements from 3 very qualified good teams that we've worked with before in the design build arena. We have Shirley Dewberry as a team, Lane Construction, and Branch with Whitman Recart. So really some very good both construction and design teams that have teamed up. Now we still will score their statements and review them to make sure that they're responsive, but we would anticipate moving forward with those 3 to submit a technical proposal that would be scored for quality, but also we would look at combining a technical score along with a price to come up with the best value selection. And you can see here our proposed, that would put us in a position to open the southbound ramp in the winter of 2017-2018, and then the northbound ramp in the summer of 2018. As I mentioned, the total project cost is estimated at $50 million, and there is this contribution from 95 Express Lanes of $25 million. We're still working out the details of that cost-sharing agreement, but that's the commitment through our framework agreement that we've already agreed to. And so with that, I'm going to let Marcy come up and talk about some of the other projects that are underway in our coordination, and we can take questions at the end. Yeah.
So as you know, we have some other projects along I-95. The biggest one you guys know about is the I-95 630 interchange. And we briefed you all just a couple weeks ago at Infrastructure Committee on that. As you know, it is located at exit 140. It is a diverging diamond, which will help reduce conflict points and enhance safety and operations. That too is a design build project, and procurement is underway. The request for proposals will go out in April. The construction is anticipated for that project between 2017 and 2020. And some new information you may not be aware of is that we are adding a bid item into that request for proposals. And that bid item will be to extend the fourth lane that the Express Lanes project, this project is going to do, extended down through the median past Courthouse Road. So that you would come off the express lanes, you'd be in the left lane adjacent to the general purpose lanes, and you would continue on down there until you got past Courthouse, and then it would come in to the regular general purpose lanes. So that is a bid option. If we do realize enough savings on the project, we will go ahead and build that option. If we do not realize enough savings, then obviously we will not build that project at this time, but we'll be well underway to be able to build it sometime in the future. Another project we have is the I-95 Rappahannock River Crossing, southbound. As you know, that was submitted for the HB2 prioritization. It is recommended for funding. That's going to add additional, it's going to be the addition of 2 parallel lanes to I-95 southbound between Route 17 and Route 3 interchanges. The CTB will make their final resolution on that in June as to whether or not it'll be included in the 6-year plan. And of course, we also submitted the northbound CD lanes. That did not get recommended for inclusion in the 6-year plan. So we can go ahead and submit that again through FAMPO this year with the HB2 applications. So how do people provide input to us on this? We've got comment forms that are available online. You can also email at the address listed, or good old-fashioned U.S. mail, which most people don't use anymore, but we do have that. And again, we are having a meeting tomorrow night. There will be comment sheets there, I'm sure, for people to be able to provide feedback. So if you have any questions, we'd be more than happy to take them.
Questions? Ms. Sellers?
And I don't need them answered now, but I've already gotten some emails on, and I think we forwarded them on to you, on the sound wall that's going up with the hot lane extension. Mm-hmm. There's some houses that are very close to 95, and they've expressed some concerns. And would like you to consider keeping the trees that are there, as many as you can, because again, there are some very close houses there. And then the lights. They're going to have questions tomorrow night about the lights that you're going to put along there. And those are just the questions that have been posed to me. And their concern is how is it going to shine into their bedroom? Because a lot of their bedrooms are on the back of their houses. So those are the 2 big questions that I've gotten from one of the neighborhoods back there. And I do anticipate some of them coming out, because they've been going door to door reminding people. So
good. We look forward to it.
Mr. Cavalier?
As far as the express lanes extension goes, the one thing I learned today was that there was not going to be an additional toll for that last 2.2 mile segment, which I think is a very good plan, because people won't get off early to save the buck or whatever to go the extra 2.2, and it'll alleviate the congestion there. But I'm interested to understand how you arrived at that decision, seeing that Transurban's going to contribute $25 million for that extension, and yet I'm not sure what benefit they're getting out of it. Can you explain that?
Well, and I don't, Susan, can you touch on that one?
Well, I would just say the benefit to them is that when it is congested on the express lanes, that's not good for their customer service. They want to provide free-flowing express lanes. So that's a goal for them. And they've even tried pricing people out because it is so congested, and that has been difficult. So they have a lot of vested interest. They want, when people pay to use those lanes, for them to have a good experience. And so when people don't have a good experience, that is not good for customer service. So I think that's the benefit to them.
Well, let me ask this. Is this agreement forever, Or is it just until they figure out they can start charging people and then enact the toll?
I mean, this would be to cover this additional, work. And so after that, could there be other, things that happen? I guess there could be. But
I realize and hope, I'm hopeful that someday this express lane goes down the
farther.
old Massaponax section. But yet what I'm asking is that, and I anticipate at that time additional tolls will come into play. But until that time happens, are they bound to this agreement to not charge the toll for that additional 2.2 miles?
I don't know. I can go back and verify what that is. I know that there's no new tolling segments. There won't be any toll gantries to measure whether people are coming, which entry point that they're using. And so, there are limitations just in terms of the infrastructure that's being provided. But let me get back to you on that.
And I just don't want this to be introductory pricing.
Right.
Mr. Milday.
Well, the words you thanks for coming, by the way. The words you chose didn't say you wouldn't charge more. You said there wasn't a separate gantry. So in that same vein, are you telling us now the tolls won't be affected, that the price of driving on the express lanes will not be impacted at all by the cost Florida Transurban is investing in this?
I'm saying that there won't be any separate tolling for that segment. Whether it gets impacted ultimately, it's congestion-based pricing, all of that is in that mix.
You are not saying that we will not pay more for the trip south. You were saying it simply will not have a separate toll gantry that charges for the additional couple of miles.
Correct.
So, Jack, I don't think you should get excited about what she said. Okay. I noticed that you didn't include the modeling data for the traffic that was included in a couple of our presentations at FAMPO over the last several months. And what that showed was that the 7 to 8 minutes that we had lost as soon as express lanes opened a little bit over a year ago, south of 610 in the morning or in the evening, for a commuter coming from south of 610, from Courthouse Road or Point South, that they're added about 7 or 8 minutes to their drive, a little bit in both directions. What the modeling data showed us was that on the southbound, and Marcy can correct me if I've got that mixed up. The southbound, there is no improvement because of this, based on this extension. And in northbound, it was about 50%. It was a small improvement one direction. Has something changed, or is that still the case?
No, so that's still the case. There were some slides in here that were taken from, so these slides here, they are from the presentation that I gave at FAMPO. And you are correct. So there was improvement, a lot more improvement northbound than there is southbound. I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head. I didn't happen to bring that with me, but I'll have it with me next week at FAMPO. But the southbound, the improvement, there was a great improvement on the express lanes. Remember from that presentation. For the general purpose lanes, it was pretty negligible.
Right. So just to be clear, if you are a person watching this or reading this and you're sitting in traffic south of 610, there's no modeled improvement by this relatively small extension. It's not going much further than about a half a mile or a mile south of 610. I mean, that's just a fact. Now, it may help you. It's going to help some of us getting off. If we're getting off on 610, my constituents are split, and half of our constituents have to keep on driving south. So, I just don't want anyone to leave this conversation thinking that there's much of an improvement being done to fix things, the traffic that we're sitting in on Courthouse Road in the morning and going towards Courthouse Road in the evening. It's about $21 million was what was left over in the. If I'm not mistaken, and I could be wrong, Anthony might remember, in the state's money that was seed money on the express lanes. Is that about right, 21 million? Because it sounds like there's a $4 million gap. I'm just curious how the state's making it up if it's a $50 million project.
Well, keep in mind that express lanes, the Transurban is contributing $25 million.
Got that.
And then VDOT makes up the rest.
Right.
Until the bid prices come in, $50 million is our best guess estimate. Prices right now on design build contracts are coming in fantastic. So we have every hope that the prices will come in much less than $50 million, but Express Lane Transurban is still contributing $25 million.
Right. Now, is that, but there was $20 odd million left over from the original 79 million that was, the state gave Florida Transurban to build the express lanes on 95, and our understanding from an earlier meeting or conversation was that was where part of the state was getting its money. Is that the state's money on the state side? Is that where the money's coming from?
Yes. It's federal money, and it wasn't really given to Transurban. It was just,
Set aside.
set aside, and we were using it for our project administration and other items that we were doing as part of the project.
Is it 21 million? Do you remember?
I think we're in that range.
Is that part of the 79 million that was given to this, or is that an
No,
addition to?
that was separate.
Okay, so
It was
about 100,
separate.
so the state, it's about $100 million would be the investment then, federal or state in the hot lanes, and the rest is publicly funded, give or take?
Something like
I just don't want to, that 50 million is important, especially when we're talking about the possibility of having an extension. Let's jump over for a minute to the divergent diamond. You also have another bid option that's just as important, and that's adding some commuter parking at that new interchange. Because right now, the plan, the original plan, stop me if I'm wrong, had a much bigger interchange and twice as many parking spaces as we have now. And the new plan puts us back, baseline is we're just replacing the commuter parking spaces we have now with a bid option to include. How do you prioritize your bid options?
Well, one change with that is that also the Stafford County, I believe, had submitted in for HB2 to build those commuter lots, and that too is currently recommended to be funded.
By the CTB just have to vote on it?
Correct. And what we would do is we would try to have the contractor that wins the design build contract to actually build using that HB2 money. So then anything saved on the base option would, of course, go toward doing this, where they're doing the fourth lane.
And when you say fourth lane, you described it. I want to make sure I understand it. It's a hardened shoulder or an added lane to the.
It is, so currently the shoulder out there is full depth asphalt for the majority of this length, and it's not quite wide enough with shoulder. So we would actually be going in, widening it with a little bit of shoulder. So it would be a 12-foot lane, and it would have about a 10-foot shoulder to the left of it, and it would run adjacent to the general purpose lanes.
Just south.
It would continue on from the express lanes, from this project, it would just continue on to, I think it was 3,000 feet south of the new interchange.
I mean, just on the southbound lanes.
Yes, sir, just on the southbound side.
So that effectively, if CTB approves the requests for the additional parking spaces, becomes a number one priority bid option, or is it the only bid option?
You mean the
For the bid on the
this option,
divergent diamond, you said it's a bid option. You're trying to get in your budget, you're trying to get that hardened or widened southbound left-hand lane added. Is that the number one bid option, or are there others?
Now that the commuter lot can be paid for from the HB2 funds, then yes, this would become the number one option, because we were going to put an option in about a multi-use path, but we've been able to include that in the base project. So we don't have a multi-use path option now that it is part of the actual project.
You chose that southbound hardened or added shoulder lane. Obviously, you have some modeling or some data that shows you that's how are we looking on a northbound solution that gets starting probably just south of Courthouse Road? Have you looked at a hardened shoulder or added shoulder lane there?
We have not. Right now we are trying to focus on the southbound because that's the worst backup.
So your NREX data or whatever tells you that's the worst of the problem.
NREX would show you the traffic volumes in each direction, and it does indicate southbound is definitely the worst situation today.
And have you considered, or are you going to the 610, the flyover south from the express lanes that brings you down to the new right-hand lane on 95 that connects directly to the 610 west? Have you thought about, or is there a way to continue that lane so that you don't have to merge into the general purpose lanes and back over to go 610 to the east?
We did not consider that in this, in the interchange project or the fourth lane project or even in the southern terminus project, but that is something that we can look at to make it more similar to kind of like Route 17, where you could continue on in that. So
it would solve a third of your traffic that's having to get in lanes and get right back off of them. We're only talking about couple hundred feet of pavement. Is there a bridge in the way? I can't remember seeing that.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the Garrisonville Bridge looks like under there, whether or not we could get another lane through under there or not. I think that it would merge into that lane.
Will you
we
have
can
someone
look at
just
that.
look at it?
We can look at that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much for the update.
Thank you.
Next, we'll have an update from Supervisor Snellings on the Armed Services Memorial Commission. So far, we've seen initial images in the design, and memorial is shaping up to be a very fitting tribute to those who have made the ultimate sacrifice. Mr. Snellings has served on the Armed Services Memorial Commission since we started it, along with General Ron Christmas and Delegate Mark Dudenheffer. So the board thanks you for your service, and we look forward to your update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The agenda says presentation. I could not come anywhere close to what just preceded this because we don't have any funding. We can't afford stuff like that. So this really is an update. The membership has increased, obviously, and you've approved that membership. Since we began, General Christmas, Delegate Dudenheffer, and myself, we've added Elizabeth Davis, who is a Marine widow, Sue Henderson, who, as you remember, worked on the 350th celebration, John Cox, who's commander of American Legion Post 290, Mark Osborne, former Stafford County Supervisor, and Dan Chichester, retired Commonwealth Attorney from Stafford County. Mr. Chichester was elected chairman at our last meeting. Our vice chairman is Mr. Osborne. The total cost of the memorial, which will be just out back across the parking lot, is $675,000. So now the next project that we're working on is the fundraising. If you'll note today's packet, item number 8 starts us on the path to do that because it will establish a revenue fund to receive charitable contributions. At our March 1st meeting, there will also be a reso asking the board to provide financial support. Currently, we know, based on Weldon Cooper statistics, that there are 38,000 veterans living in Stafford County. And I know that they are going to be proud of what this memorial will bring to this county. We do meet every other Tuesday. Our next meeting is in ABC this coming Tuesday at 3 o'clock. We certainly ask everyone if you feel free to drop by, and I'm very pleased at the progress we've made. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Snellings. At this time, we'll have presentations by the public. Anyone who wishes to address the board will have an opportunity to do so. When you come to the podium, please state your name and address. When the green light illuminates, you'll have 3 minutes. The yellow light indicates 1 minute, and the red light indicates time has expired. I wanted
to comment on what was just said. Was not an opportunity for a question or comment?
Sure, go ahead.
Just because Dan is here, and I'm speaking to a group of people who are distinguished vets in some cases, if not just vets. I've made this, I say it every time, I just have never seen a memorial that doesn't have the names of all the people, and I know why, I see the rationale, but of the people who have died in the service of our country on the memorial. I haven't got my head around that idea yet, so I wanted to just say that I'm still kind of hoping that conversation isn't dead, and that the idea of doing a memorial that actually lists the soldiers that have died is not a dead idea. That's all I have.
Okay.
And thank you, and Gary, thank you so much for doing this. I know it's no small task.
Anybody else? Okay. Back to presentations by the public. I don't have any speaker cards, so if anybody in the chambers would like to address the board, please come to the podium. Seeing none, we'll close presentations by the public, and next we'll have committee reports by board members.
Mr. Milday?
I have none, thank you.
Ms. Sellers?
Okay, last week, excuse me. Well, Chaplain's met twice now, and Chaplain's going to be moving. So in case you guys have heard that, the EDA is gone into a contract with the building we're in. So we are looking for new space. Anybody who has any ideas where they could move, I'm sure Ben would love some help on finding a new place. But we are looking to move. And then Public Safety met today. We are looking at the staffing matrix. As a few of us were up there, and that was probably the biggest ticket item, was looking at where we have volunteer versus career staff. That's all I have.
Mr. Snellings?
I'll defer.
Ms. Baumke?
Just have 3 things. A number of us went over and congratulated Martha Hutzel, the new executive director, for the library system. And I just want to let everybody know that I received a number of comments from library people that they really, really appreciated a $50,000 materials contribution that we made to them. That was very instrumental in a lot of the things they're doing. Also, some of us met with Congressman Rob Whitman for the tour of Stafford High School. It was really great. Thank you to Dr. Benson and his staff that were there, and others on the board that joined me, along with a few school board members. I would say probably the item that he was the most impressed with were the science labs. Of course, he's a science guy anyway. But anyway, it was very good, and I actually enjoyed seeing the entire school because I hadn't seen it. And then the last thing is Chairman Thomas and I are having a town hall meeting. It has been canceled twice due to bad weather, but I want to let people know it is not at the Falmouth Volunteer Fire Department this time. It's at Falmouth Elementary School this Thursday at 7 o'clock. Hope you can come.
Mr. Cavalier?
Few items from the Finance, Audit, and Budget Committee today. We got a health insurance update on some RFPs results that came in, and those are still being considered at this point. We're looking at doing something jointly with the schools this year, so stay tuned on that. Shared services is another area we're working with the schools. We've identified some low-hanging fruit that we can do a little easier than most things, and those items or those categories include HR, grounds maintenance, and a new contracts administrator position. All still to be ironed out. Third item was the FY 2015 schools carryover funds, which we have on today's board agenda, so everyone will get a chance to participate in that discussion upcoming. We talked about some possible changes to the monthly financial report, the format thereof, and decision was made to put off any changes there until after the budget cycle and the fiscal year concluded this year, so we wouldn't have any problems. So that's kind of put on the back burner, but we'll examine that again later. And then Lake Arrowhead, the dam there needs a closer look, and so an engineering study is now being considered. We think that the cost is going to be about $30,000, of which we can hopefully get back half from the state on this matter, and that also is being vetted in the infrastructure committee. So we should have a recommendation at the next board of supervisors meeting on the outcome of that. So that concludes my report.
Mrs. Mauer?
Okay, the Legislative Committee is meeting on a weekly basis, and it looks like the proffer bill has gone through. There have been minor changes, but not enough to really reduce the impacts to Stafford County. We have one final push before it goes to the governor's desk, and several of the high-growth counties are getting together to try and push some additional language changes to this bill before the governor actually signs off on it. I'd like to thank Chairman Bob Thomas here for actually going down to Richmond, meeting with both Delegate Dudenheffer and the Speaker of the House, Bill Howell, trying to push some of these language changes to minimize the impact on Stafford County. So there's been a large push from staff, from all of my colleagues here on the board, and not certain we're going to be successful. So it's gonna create some changes here in Stafford County, and I'm highly concerned, but we will get through this. Also, a few minor things. Unfortunately, VDOT left. I was very vocal about the problems we had with snow, And I will say they did hear me, which I truly appreciate, and they did make some minor tweaks that got the same people who had complained to me actually sent me emails thanking me that years and years worth of problems that they had seen with their cul-de-sacs getting skipped did not happen this time around. Understand that the amount of snow that fell was significantly less, but these were people that had been skipped for years and years. So I really appreciate VDOT and appreciate the impact that we had at a local level. So very thankful for that. Also want to congratulate Jerry Rohal. He's a junior at Mountain View for his silver medal at the U.S. Open for Taekwondo in Reno, Nevada. And so his goal is to go to the Olympics in 2020, and hopefully we'll have another name to add to our Parks and Rec building. And then finally, condolences to the Heflin family. We lost here in Stafford County a longtime resident and local business owner, and I just want to wish my best for the family. They are really great people, and my sincerest condolences. That concludes.
Mr. Thomas.
Thank you. I attended the PRTC meeting. They're still gnawing away at the budget there. A slight update on the gas tax. There actually wasn't a bill in the House, but there was a bill in the Senate that did pass, so it's working its way through anyway. So it's probably dead on arrival. But PRTC's secondary approach to this is to work some budget amendments. And I made sure they understood that that doesn't help Stafford County, because those budget amendments are basically just covering the delta for public transportation. So I reminded them that we've had to cut, several 30 million, I think, dollars worth of transportation projects out, and those budget amendments, although helpful, are not helpful to us. So I'll keep my eye out on those. We had a library board meeting. Our last director was there for 30 years, so we have a fresh face with lots of new ideas, so she's thrown a lot at the board to do, and we're looking forward to that. We're actually, instead of meeting just quarterly, we're going to meet every other month for the first 2 or 3 meetings just to handle some of the ideas she's bringing. So hopefully I'll have some news to bring you then on the board for the library. Attended the Youth First event with Supervisor Sellers, and Mr. Snellings was there, as well as Mr. Romanello. It's the 10th anniversary for that, and Donna Kraus and her team are doing an excellent job. I had to park, I think I parked in Fauquier County to get to the Riverside Dinner Theater. That's how good the turnout was, so congratulations to her on a successful event. Attended the VACO Board of Directors meeting, where we had a lot of discussions, as you might imagine, on all these bills that are hitting towns and counties. And had the opportunity to go over to the General Assembly and lobby on a couple of different bills, to include the proffer bill. And then the last thing, the board had our strategic planning session on February 5th and 6th. This is an opportunity to get out of the weekly meetings where we're making decisions at a very low level and kind of think big and strategic. We talked about things such as utilities, their needs, the rate structure going forward, public safety, economic development. We had somebody come in from the state, VEDP, and give us a brief on how we're doing and how we can make things even better there. And obviously we talked about the budget. I think you saw a newspaper article that summed up the presentation we had. That was, just so everybody knows, an unconstrained budget. That's if everybody in every department could have what they felt they needed. Obviously the staff is working on bringing us a balanced budget. So by the time that makes it to us, it'll be a lot different than what we saw on February 6th. And then the last topic was the board had an opportunity to talk about our performance and things we can do to step up our game and do better for our citizens and deliver the performance that we're all trying to give to our constituents. It was a great conversation, and I think the board came away refreshed and ready to hit 2016 and make it our best year yet. That's all I have.
Mr. Shoemate?
Defer any comments?
Mr. Romanello?
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, I'd like to ask Mr. Dayton if he'd come up, please. We do have one additional item, which is late-breaking news from the state having to do with the Exit 140 project that we'd like to talk with the board about today, because we do have a very short window of opportunity if we'd like to ask the state to incorporate a component of this component into the Exit 140 bid package.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Keith Dayton, Deputy County Administrator. As you were made aware of just earlier in the meeting, VDOT is currently working on its detailed proposal package, design build for Exit 140. They expect to issue that detailed proposal next month for receipt this fall. The project includes about 1,800 feet of new connector road, 2-lane, that will reconnect Weiss Road that's being cut off for the new exit 140 location back to the realigned Courthouse Road. We have recently been made aware that there's concerns about the capacity of this 2-lane road to serve the area that the board envisioned as being new commercial when they rezone that area, southeast quadrant of in the interchange area from industrial to commercial. The road will also have to serve a new commuter parking lot that was recently approved for funding through the HB2 process. So we looked at it and feel that we may need to definitely ask VDOT to consider widening that 2-lane section of road to 4 lanes. If the board was inclined to do that and VDOT could find funding for it, it'd be most efficiently completed along with all the work that's being done as part of Exit 140, rather than having to come in at a later date and redo some of that work and then replace it at that time. Funding could be provided through some efficiencies that result from this design-build process, perhaps surplus monies that from the bidding of the Exit 140, or potentially with the HB2 funding when the commuter lot is built adjacent to that. VDOT indicated they would include it as a proposal alternate if the county requested that it be done. The board had previously indicated its priorities for additional work by resolution, so we felt if the board was inclined that it should be done as a board motion. We've included a letter to Ms. Marcy Parker, the VDOT District Administrator, that would indicate board support for adding this as a proposal alternate. And it's in your add-on folder, and staff does recommend approval. If you have any questions, be happy to try and answer them.
Do we have any questions on this? As staff indicated, this was very late breaking, so I apologize it didn't make it into the meeting. But because of the extreme time sensitivity, I would entertain a motion that we forward that letter on and the board gets behind it. I have a motion and we have a second by Ms. Sellers. Please cast your votes. Tally the vote. That motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Mr. Dayton.
Mr. Chairman, we have one addition to today's agenda. That's item number 19, which would approve the appointment of Mr. Brian A. Baxter to the county's Telecommunications Commission, recommending the Heartwood District. And I would also ask that the board pull item 7 from the consent agenda so a board member can note an abstention. And that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you very much. Do I have a motion for the agenda with that addition of number 19? Moved by Ms. Mauer, seconded by Ms. Sellers. Please cast your vote. Tally the vote. Motion passes 7-0. Okay, so now we have the consent agenda, and number 7 is being pulled. Do any members wish to pull another item from the consent? Seeing none, do we have a motion for the consent agenda? So moved by Ms. Mauer, seconded by Ms. Sellers. Please cast your vote. Tally the vote. Motion passes 7-0. Item number 7.
Mr. Chairman, I had asked the county administrator to pull this. This project could affect property owned by some of my family members, so I will abstain from the vote.
Okay. Are there any other questions on this item since we have it pulled? Ms. Baumke?
I'm actually glad that this item was pulled because I'd like to have a presentation on it and understand it a little bit better from staff.
Mr. Dayton, please.
And just so the public knows, this is planning and zoning express support for a break in the limited access on Centerport Parkway.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Baumke, just west of the current interchange at Centerport Parkway, there's 2 parcels of commercially zoned property already rezoned. One on the north side of Centerport Parkway, one on the south. When the parkway was approved and constructed, the limited access off of the interstate extended all the way close to the intersection with Mountain View Road, probably a mile. It was envisioned at one time that access back to these parcels would either come by going all the way up to Mountain View Road, turning around and coming back down close to the interchange, which is awkward at best, to the north side, or on the south side through an adjacent property owner who has not consented to construction of access across their property for this commercially zoned piece. So in order to move forward with the project, the developer is looking to go ahead and request from the Commonwealth Transportation Board a break in the limited access that must be endorsed by the local community. This would, while not cheap, it would provide, let's say, better access to this parcel, regardless of what happens there. It's very awkward to travel a mile and then double back to get to your restaurant, to get to your hotel room. This would provide access immediately off the interchange by a series of ramps. Essentially, it would be we'll call it an intersection that looks a lot like the current Courthouse Road intersection at 140. Designed very much the same way. So not inexpensive, but also not limiting to traffic by such as a signalized intersection might do. So all in all, we've looked at it, and to the extent that they have requested a break, I believe staff feels that makes an awful lot of sense right there going forward.
Mr. Mildy?
Did this come through infrastructure?
No, sir, it did not.
How did this end up on this agenda?
Well,
staff, Clark Lemming called staff and said he wanted to talk about it. I'm not being smart.
Well, we did have a meeting with Mr. Lemming, who represents the developer, and we sat through it, and the request was basically just for a break in the limited access, and we felt it made sense.
And I don't think I fully understand it, which is why I'm asking. I assume that these guys have owned this for the last 10 years?
No, sir, this is a new owner.
Yeah, and so do we have time? Is it time sensitive? I mean, the problem has existed since we built the Centerport Parkway.
No, sir, I don't believe there is any time sensitivity to it. Certainly the developer has indicated they'd like to get this package in because it has to be reviewed at several levels of VDOT before it gets to the CTB. But beyond that, there is no sense of urgency to this.
Are you sure? Because CTB, I know, has big meetings where they vote on funding here coming up soon. Are they trying to catch CTB before?
There is no funding from the state would be involved. This would all be privately funded. To the best of our knowledge, and as explained to us, it would be privately funded. So this is just a process that ultimately ends up with CTB consideration at the state level. And they have targeted trying to get to the CTB around the June timeframe. But
do we have time? Do you mind if we run it through infrastructure?
If that's the will of the board,
Does the
certainly.
board mind if we run it through infrastructure?
No,
Yeah.
I have a question.
Okay with me.
Yeah, okay, I appreciate that explanation, Mr. Dayton. I have a question because in here, there's a backup resolution from 2007 when the board approved something else related to this development. But when you look on the Commissioner of Revenue's website for who the current owner is, the original resolution refers to a company called G&G, G&G Gate.
Gorley and Gorley.
Yeah.
Has to be.
Right, but now it refers to GAM Centerport Parkway. But yet on the Commissioner of Revenue's website, it shows that their transfer of title had not changed between 1972 and 2016. So I'm trying to figure out, is this GAM or is it G&G, and where's the difference?
Ms. Baumke, we were told that the property only just closed. We had a meeting within the last 2 weeks, so it's possible that, well, assuming that the information we were provided is factual, that the records have not been updated yet.
No, it says that it changed in 2016. No, it was referred, but the other owner from 2007, when the resolution was approved by the Board of Supervisors, refers to a different company on the exact same parcel. So if we could do some research on that, I'd appreciate it.
Oh, certainly.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I had a family connection with G&G, which is, I believe, I abstained from any votes that were taken back then.
Yes,
And
you did.
And I don't know that they don't have any interest in this anymore.
Okay, I think Mr. Milday has a motion to defer and refer to the Infrastructure Committee. Do I have a second for that?
Second.
Second by Ms. Sellers. Please vote. Tally the vote. Motion passes. Mr. Sellers, we have a motion for a deferral. You're abstaining, right? Okay, motion passes 6-0 with 1 abstention. Okay, next we have item number 9. Parks, Recreation, and Community Facilities, presentation on Embry Mill signage, proposal of criteria for selection of athletes featured at the Jeff Rouse Swim and Sport Center display case. Ms. Fulbright.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm Kathy Volbrick, the Interim Director of Parks, Recreation, and Community Facilities, and I am here today to present the planned draft signage for Embry Mill Park and the Jeff Rouse Swim and Sport Center. The first sign that I'd like to show you is the monument sign that will be constructed at the entrance to the park from Mine Road. The dimensions of this sign are it's 9 feet high, 12 feet wide. It will be lighted, and it will include an electronic changeable message sign at the bottom to advertise upcoming events, games, tournaments, that type of information. The next sign that you're seeing is the logo on the outside of the building in the upper right-hand portion. The logo will be about 18 feet across and almost 10.5 feet from top to bottom. And the next slide will show you sort of what it will look like. This is not to scale, but we wanted to give you an idea of where on that building it would go. Here's a close-up of the logo, and you'll notice that at the bottom it does include a public-private partnership with Stafford County.
Who did our logo work?
I believe this was ESM, Eastern Sports Management.
Looks nice.
As I mentioned, the sign will be on the exterior of the building. It will be lighted, and it will also include the text at the bottom, which I had mentioned about the partnership with Stafford County. Now we're going inside the building. This is a draft of the Wall of Fame exhibit. And I'm just going to talk about the exhibit in general terms, and then I will go into detail on each panel. The overall width of this case, and it is a wooden case, is 12 feet wide, and the exhibit graphic behind it measures about 17.5 feet wide. The case height is 8 feet tall, and the signage above measures about 11 feet wide, the Jeff Rouse Women's Sports Center and the Stafford Sports Wall of Fame. And it will begin just about 8 inches from the ceiling. You'll notice the 2 panels on the side. They will be enclosed in plexiglass, and that's to protect some of the artifacts that we have in there. One of them is Jeff Rouse's Olympic jacket, and then we also have a football from Torrey Smith, a signed football, I believe, and then pictures as well as newspaper articles. You don't see it on this slide, but later on in the presentation, a quote from Jeff Rouse. 2 quotes actually will be on each side of that case. And then at the bottom, the brown wooden bars are actually shelves, and they will contain text that describes what is in each panel, what is in each case. And the casework is made of birch to match the lobby desk. And again, this is not to scale, but we wanted to give you an idea of where it would go. It's just inside the lobby to the right, and this is what it will look like on that wall. It will be 3 large panels attached to the wall. The center panel will focus on Jeff Rouse, and the additional panels will include other Stafford Olympians and pro athletes.
Mr. Milday?
Were all of these people born in Stafford?
Not born in Stafford. They are from Stafford. They have a connection either through graduating from a high school in Stafford or being a resident here.
Then why there's at least one missing?
Right, Mr. Milday, and what we have later on in the presentation is we know this list is not inclusive. We are asking for the community's help to let us know who we don't have on there. We did research, the artist did some research, but we do want to make sure that we are going to have space to add future athletes and people that we've
You
missed.
wouldn't have to do much research. Just have to just sit here and listen to me talk over the last 2 years. You would have heard me mention her name about 15 or 20 times. So
And she's actually one of our Olympians. She is featured on this in this display.
oh,
She's actually one of the Olympic coaches now. So just to kind of put that out there.
Right.
okay, so this is an incomplete list, and there's another wall that has another, okay, thank you.
Right, and I'll go into that as we get farther into the
Because
presentation.
This has Olympians on it. The ones I'm looking at, this list here has a bunch of Olympians, and she's just not on it, so.
If you're looking straight at the exhibit, the left case will feature Olympians, and Arlene Lemus is on that, and then the right case will feature pro athletes.
I'm only speaking to what we're all looking at right now. It says featured athletes, and it lists a bunch of Olympians, and she's just not there. That's why I asked the question. So
She's not listed there, but that doesn't mean she's not included.
Is there anybody else that's not there that's not listed on the list of featured athletes?
I think some of our other Olympians are probably, we don't have all the Olympians on there.
Some of them. Okay. I don't understand. I'll figure it out. Thank you.
Okay. So now I'm going to talk about the first panel. This is again, on the Wall of Fame. This is the far left panel. This includes Jeff Rouse's Olympic jacket and medal, not the actual medal, just an artist's rendition of that, and the list of other Stafford Olympians, their accomplishments and photos. And what we've included, there is an article on Stafford's Olympians that ran in the Freelance Star, and there's information about each Stafford Olympian, including Jeff Rouse, Mark Lindsay, Arlene Lemus, and our newest Olympian, Thomas Baker, who won a gold medal in powerlifting in the 2015 World Summer Games of the Special Olympics. The write-up on each Olympian includes the medals they won, the year in which they won the medals, their link to Stafford, whether it is a Stafford High School or a Stafford business that they have started, such as in Arlene Lemus's case. And we've also included photos of those Olympians. Here's a close-up of the panel. I don't know if you can actually read everything that's on there, but just to give you an idea, there are a mixture of pictures and text and information about each Olympian. The cartoon was something that we found. This is from the Potomac News, and it captures Stafford's participation in the 1992 Games at Barcelona. Just to give you an idea of how many we had, I think there were 5 Olympians compared to some of the other countries. This is the center panel. This panel focuses on Jeff Rouse and includes his bio and accomplishments, as well as his medals are portrayed or displayed there. We also have his presidential letters and photos. And the presidential letters are from President Clinton and President Reagan. And here's a close-up of that panel. This is the third panel on the right. This one showcases the pro athletes from Stafford. Now, what is important to note about this is that this is not a permanent part of the background. The athletes are displayed on 5x8 cards on plexiglass trays that are mounted to the wall. This will allow us to move them if we want to and add future athletes, such as the one Mrs. Moore mentioned. The cards can be removed and replaced. But the cards that are up there now have the pictures of the athletes, a high school from which they graduated, the year they graduated, and some of their other athletic accomplishments. And here's where we are asking. We know that this does not include every Stafford athlete out there, so we are asking the community for help to let us know who did we miss and give us the information, and we will work with the board to see how they should be displayed.
Mr. Cavalier.
Before we ask that question, I think we need to have the discussion on the criteria that must be met before we place names here. And we haven't had that discussion yet. So I think we're putting the cart ahead of the horse here a little bit. So I know there are people out there who deserve to be in this, but we have to vet this a little bit, and and I know you're going to go on and tell me about the selection panel and all that kind of stuff, but I wouldn't put out there, tell us who we missed quite yet, because I think we need to make the parameters known what they are. Pro athlete, well, there's a lot of levels of pro athletes, and we probably have quite a lot of pro athletes at one time or another in this county, particularly in baseball, with the many different minor league levels involved. And in some sports you don't go pro. Amateur status is as high as you can go. I mean, you look at probably the greatest golfer ever, Bobby Jones, and he retained amateur status throughout. But so we have to pin this down. For the sports that don't go pro, is the criteria. Certainly, Olympic athlete is the ultimate, I would think. But do we go Division I All-American in college as another criteria for some sports? So there's a lot to consider here, and I think we need to really vet this before we start opening up the book here.
Yes, sir. And as you mentioned, there will be a little bit of information later on in the presentation that will hopefully help the board toward that direction. The next slide here, these are the two end panels that will go on the larger case in the main lobby, and these will include quotes by Jeff Rouse. They will be etched into the wood and covered by the plexiglass. The next slides, I will be talking about the Mark Lindsay display that will be in the pool area. This is a glass display case that will house a banner that was flown in the bleachers at the 1992 Olympics in Barcelona. And there's a plaque at the bottom that includes the description of what that banner is about. And from what we understand, there were many Stafford residents who signed that banner before Mr. Lindsay went to the Olympics. Here's a close-up of what that plaque says, so that people who are visiting the facility will be able to understand what that banner is about. And I'm told there are many names that will be familiar to a lot of Stafford residents now. This next slide, this is the mural that will go alongside the glass case. It is about 4 by 7. It will be displayed on the wall by the glass case that has the banner inside. And it includes Mr. Lindsay's accomplishments, photos, a newspaper article that lists his career highlights. And there's also a quote from the International Swimming Hall of Fame that also talks about his career highlights. So we wanted to give you an idea of where that glass case would go. We had taken Mrs. Lindsay to the facility and wanted her to see what it looked like, and she had suggested that perhaps it could go right inside the entrance to the pool area. So the banner would be posted on the wall, and the glass case would go right where you see the glass case indicated. And that would enable visitors to the pool to walk around both sides of the banner and see the front and the back. And again, this is just to give you an idea of where that glass case would be. We also wanted to, talk a little bit about the diving well that is currently under construction. Back in September, the board approved having the diving well named after Mark Lindsay, and the artist came up with two possibilities for the signage back there. This is one idea. This would be mounted to the wall on metal strips. It would have black lettering, and the size would be about 2 by 8. Again, that's not to scale. It's just to give you an idea of what that would look like. And here's the second option that we could put out there. Everything, all the words side by side. This one, again, mounted to the wall on metal strips with black lettering, and the size would be about a 2 by 16. And that's an idea of what it would look like on the diving well wall. So how were the athletes selected for display for this particular this version of the mural? They are a resident of Stafford. Olympic athletes, or individuals who participated in a national or world competition, or individuals who were selected or drafted to a pro team. The artist did work with media representatives and staff and was able to research a lot of this information. Yes, ma'am.
The selected or drafted?
Yes.
That's going to create some problems because you can get drafted to a team and not make the team. So just something to
Okay.
think about.
We'll make a note of that.
In the NFL, the only people who get automatic on a team is like the first 10 draft picks or something. So just something to think about. Okay.
So I've talked about what was done to sort of get to where we are today with the mural, but there have been many questions and discussions about recognizing future athletes. So staff would like to recommend that the board consider the creation of a selection committee for future athletes. This committee could come up with criteria for inclusion on the Wall of Fame. We could include members of the Board of Supervisors, Parks and Recreation Commission members, high school coaches or middle school coaches, volunteers from the community as well. We think that this would give the community a chance to weigh in on who should be featured and why, so that the athletes featured are truly our future hometown heroes. And Mr. Chairman, that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
Can you go back to the previous slide just for a second? Oh.
Next one.
Computer, please.
Yeah, this one right here. Having talked to several board members, I think, Mr. Cavalier was kind of hitting on something. Instead of picking a list of people, if we focus on criteria, then whoever fits the criteria just automatically gets selected and nobody feels left out, or you don't have to have a committee of people that feel bad for missing someone. If we can figure out how to get to that, here's the criteria, and then on an annual basis, we look at new names and do they meet or not meet the criteria. I think that would get rid of some of the angst that we're trying to prevent with this. Now, how we get to that criteria, I'm not sure, and I think that's kind of a board discussion. So if there's no more questions, it's probably a good time to talk about, how we see that moving forward. Is that a couple of people from this board put that criteria together with staff? Do we want to open it up to people, that's listed here, Parks and Rec Commission? There's no good answer right now, but we do need to figure it out. Yes. We need to figure it out soon, because when we do the opening here in a couple months, we would like to have something on the wall and not have it be a big TBD here. So, any ideas?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to be a part of I think maybe we set up a subcommittee of some sort here, perhaps, at least initially, to have something for the next board meeting so that people could look at it. Sit down with staff, and having us all 7 do it at one time is going to be tough.
I think you need to be, since you're the expert on the NFL draft process.
I don't know about that, but and we did talk about at the retreat, bringing in the Lindsay family or somebody from the 3 big athletes that we're already putting up there. So Jeff Rouse, Mark Lindsay, and Arlene Lemus, having somebody from their either family, friends themselves come and help us as well.
I think that was when we were more trying to pick the people, but I think now we're just trying to, from a technical standpoint, just define for every sport that we can think of, what are those criteria, and then that'll lead us to the name of, the list of names. We have room for a third. We're allowed to have 3. If anybody wants to do that. Ms. Bonke? Okay. Okay, so I think we have our working party and their mission is defined. So, anything else needed from staff at this point?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. Oh, Mr. Snelling, sorry.
I just have a question. Kathy, Ms. Lindsay has not seen this yet, is that correct?
No, sir. What happened was we were supposed to meet yesterday, and our meeting got snowed out. I did send her a copy of the presentation. I have not heard back yet, but we are planning to meet tomorrow afternoon to go over this.
But that part with her son is still based on her approval.
She has not given her approval for this. That's what the purpose of the meeting is. But when we had met previously, she had asked if there was going to be additional information about her son, including the articles, the photos, and his accomplishments.
I guess the point I'm trying to make, this could change.
It could,
based
yes,
on her
sir.
input.
Yes, sir.
Because when I was chairman, I committed to her that we would do as much as possible to meet her wishes. And if she makes changes, then I think the board needs to be prepared for that.
Yes, sir. And I'll certainly communicate that if she has any changes.
Ms. Sellers?
One more observation where we have his name behind the diving well. Did we ever think about going and asking some of our students to maybe do a mural or have, like that one building in Fredericksburg that they just repainted?
We have not asked. We have not asked, but that is certainly an idea that we could.
Well, we have a lot of really good we got a lot of really good artists. I wonder if they would do some sort of, I don't know, the superintendent's here. He might have a better idea, but that'd be fun. And maybe Miss Lindsay get her involved and get the kids and she could tell them the story and see what kind of inspiration comes from that. I don't know.
I'd be happy to bring it up to her tomorrow.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, next we have number 10, Planning and Zoning. Authorize a proffer amendment on 41.72 acres, zoned R3, urban residential high density, Colonial Forge in the Heartwood District.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion for approval for proposed ordinance 16-03.
Okay, we have a motion for 01603 and we have a second. Do we have any discussion or questions for staff?
Mr. Chairman?
For item number 10.
Oh, Stevenson.
Oh.
I know what we're doing.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
I just wanted to make a comment on this. I'm actually going to support this, and given all of the questions I asked during the last public hearing, I wanted to express why I was going to support this. First and foremost, the developers come back with an additional $250,000. And a lot of my concern over this was ensuring not necessarily that we get all that we can from the developer, but that we get the value of what we were giving up. And so since this went from 991 homes down to 900 homes, first off, the 100,000 square feet of commercial property was taken off the table. So then we had to look at the value of the 50,000 square feet of commercial that we were giving up, as well as the graded and seated ball fields. Staff, I appreciate them coming back with valuations of those. And it appears that the ball fields would roughly be about $520,000 given the condition, but it doesn't take into account the fact that we would have to invest in quite a bit of infrastructure in order to accommodate them from a Parks and Rec perspective. Secondly, the commercial 50,000 came back at a value of roughly 86,000 to 200,000 annually based upon the value of the building that would be built. That between those numbers, I feel that the 1.25 million is adequate as far as getting the value of what we're giving up, considering that commercial property would probably remain vacant, and I have vacant commercial buildings in my district. I understand how those can be difficult. So I just wanted to let people know the reason I am changing my consideration on this and why. Thank you.
Mr. Milday.
Are we going to have a presentation? Or are we just going to, or are we just doing,
If you have questions, we have the presentation. The reason we held it to this meeting is because the proffer changed at the last minute.
It's been a couple of weeks, or maybe, I don't know, has it been 4 weeks or 2 weeks? But we're adding, the builder is, the developer is stuck at how many lots? 800?
It's they're reducing the maximum number of dwelling units in Augustine down to 900 units. The project
as part of the proposal, you're saying?
Yes. Yeah.
I'm asking how many they can build right now if we don't act.
If they right now they can build, I guess it would be 915, 927 lots total.
If we don't act and the proffers aren't met, how many can they build?
800 units, yes.
Right.
Right.
And the proffers can't be met because they don't even own the commercial property they have to develop.
Correct.
Right. So there is no chance they're going to meet the proffers.
Right.
So they can build 800 homes, and they've already accidentally built infrastructure for slightly more.
They have infrastructure that would allow for eventually up to 890 units.
So this represents an additional 100 homes.
Right.
And we are getting How much in cash and how much in trade as part of the offer?
Cash would be $250,000 in-kind improvements, $942,000.
Most or all of which of that in-kind are the fields?
That's for the work to be done to support fields in Green Mill Park.
Not synthetic turf, these are grass fields?
Grass fields.
And the dirt, they're moving dirt into, there's a lot of value, a lot of that is dirt.
It's dirt and the retaining walls and site work involved.
Okay. All right, well, thank you for answering my questions.
Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, I thought that the developer had agreed to the 250,000 would be for turf fields, not grass fields. I thought there was a change there, no?
I think it's just 250 flat.
Oh, it's just 250 flat in cash, not related to the fields.
It is to the field. Towards the park. Towards the park, so we could add up the rest to get to the turf fields, but we don't have the money to do that
Okay.
right now, so.
All right, got it. Just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Mr. Mildy?
So if you concede, and I can't see how you wouldn't, but stop me, I want you to question me if I'm wrong, but we're allowing 100 units to be built. What's the mix of units again? What's the possibility of types of units? Single family detached versus?
The remaining units, the majority, well, it's a little bit more than half of the remaining units would be single family detached. There is a section of some townhomes as well.
So, no, is there any apartments? Can't remember.
There are a few multifamily design, but they're up in the front. That's already built.
All right, so it's just townhouses or single family. Any idea how many kids are generated from that?
Generally, one child per dwelling on average. You'd probably be a greater number for new development.
What's what's our total? What's our proffer? What do we charge for in a rezoning for a proffer for a single family detached house right now?
That right now is approximately maybe $48,000 is a recommended amount.
How much the recommended? And we don't always get all that. And how much of that approximately is for schools, capital improvements for schools?
That can be off the top of my, I'm not positive, but it could be $25,000 to $30,000 worth of that.
And the rest of that 40-odd thousand is for transportation, parks and rec, things like that?
And library and general government, yes, fire and rescue.
And 1.25 million divided by 100 is about 12,500. That's
Yes.
that's what we're getting ready to vote on right now.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I do have another
Go ahead.
Were there more, I'm sorry. Were there more proffers that were provided as the original rezoning of this? If I remember correctly, there was Colonial Forge, they did $1 million for a water tower, they did, a significant amount for road improvements, they created a cut-through road. I mean, okay.
Yes. Yeah,
So the entire rezoning incorporated a significant number of proffers at the front end that they have met.
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Milday?
Can they take that stuff back they gave us?
No,
That they have to do that already, right?
it's already completed
So
improvements.
That was for the first 800 units, basically, effectively.
Well,
All right.
I'd have to look at the timing as to when that was all required, but it was those were things that were
Yeah, they
provided
needed
early on in
Colonial
the
Forge.
process.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, we have proposed ordinance 01603 on the floor. Please cast your votes. Correct. Tally the vote. Motion passes 4-3. Okay, next is number 11, County Administration. Amend the board's legislative initiatives regarding HB 770 and SB 549. Mr. Baruti, floor is yours.
Mr. Chairman, Tim Baruti, Deputy County Administrator. Thank you. As Ms. Maurer had already alluded to, obviously the proffer bill is moving quickly in the General Assembly. I will draw your attention to the add-on document that is before you. That is an amended version of the home builders' latest stance on the amendment they're pursuing. So the redlined versions are the stuff that's happened between Friday and yesterday. So this is the current version of the bill that is scheduled to go before the House tomorrow. I would also suggest that the legislative committee has directed us to work with our counterparts in Fairfax, Prince William, Loudoun, Chesterfield, and Suffolk on trying to build consensus on a piece to go after that might make a difference. Again, the train has left the station on the bulk of this bill, but the consensus of that group led them to a provision on page 2, highlighted in yellow, and that is what they are pursuing right now before the home builders. Again, the home builders are a powerful lobby, and they are working the home builders on that provision to strike the yellow. Stafford County had hoped that we would strike everything on that page 2 in section C that was not bolded. So we have failed at that, at least to date, and are now working with the other affected localities to strike the highlighted version. With that, you've got a resolution before you that essentially puts this community on record, this board on record, in opposing the bill as drafted. I'm happy to try to take any questions.
Any questions? Okay, nothing further. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion for R16-68 and seconded. Please cast your votes. Tally the vote. Motion passes 7-0. Next item is number 12, Finance and Budget. Consider the school board's new elementary education specifications.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I could certainly tee this up. Dr. Benson is here along with Mr. Haran. This was discussed at the joint joint FAB meeting rather, and has to do with the new specifications for future elementary schools in the county. As part of that conversation, there are additional costs associated with our next new school, which will be a replacement school at the new site for Annie Moncure Elementary School up in North Stafford, just off of Juggins Road. The new site just off of Juggins Road. County staff was involved in the development process. Mr. Baruti and our former Parks Director, Ms. Porter, were involved in that. It does increase the cost of the project in the neighborhood of $5 million. That's both due to inflation as well as the additional square footage. Part of the reason for the conversation now is that the school board has authorized a design contract to keep the project on schedule and wanted to get the Board of Supervisors guidance on the particulars of the design and whether to go forward with this. When we propose the capital improvement program on the 1st of March, that will be a balanced capital improvement program. We are facing, and the sheet is in your board package, in the near years, or the first 5 years, we're about $15 million out of balance in those first 5 years, and then over the course of the full CIP, we're also out of balance, principally due to some projects out in the 10th year of the CIP window. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Mildy?
I read this. I'm just making sure I understand it. Are we voting on increasing the CIP for the schools, or a new design standard?
It's the latter. I think that certainly the Board of Supervisors could send direction to the school board that the additional costs would need to be absorbed within the school component of the CIP. But the decision in front of you today is whether or not you support the new design specifications. Certainly, we have, even as I mentioned, there's a $15 million gap in the first 5 years. So even if Moncure is built on the old platform for our elementary schools, Anthony Burns, Conway, some of the other fairly new schools, we still have $10 million that we have to find within the proposed CIP in the near years. As we'll talk about in the next item, which has to do with the reappropriation of FY15 funds, there
a small amount, I saw.
$2 million could go towards this project to help offset the gap.
So what is their schools component of the CIP? How do you define that or determine that?
There is no metric, Mr. Mildy. It's needs and prioritized by the Board of Supervisors. We have not given it a specific percentage. The schools have had the majority of the CIP, certainly in recent memory.
Right, that's fine. That's appropriate. But if we're going to vote for a design standard, we know it's going to cost more. And there is no way to rule on what part of our CIP is theirs, then it sounds like we're voting almost immediately to put them in further competition with our other projects. The chairman alluded to earlier about cutting back on transportation and other things by a large amount. I just want to make sure. I may be the only one that has that concern. It just seems to me pretty obvious. I don't want to vote on this unless we absolutely make that that direction that this has to be absorbed somehow in their component. I don't know what their component is.
Just to clarify, in the therefore statement for the resolution, your point is very valid, and that's why when we crafted this, the resolution it supports the prototype and all the work that went into that, but it also says it supports the school board's reductions to their other bond-funded projects or using more cash. So there is that. We don't necessarily disagree that the school of the future is what we want here in Stafford, but we still need the school board to help us figure out how to pay for it. So you're right, and that's what this resolution is kind of supporting, both.
But without a way of measuring the part of the CIP that is the schools, I just don't know how you even measure that. You're good at these things. How do you say, well, this is what we would have spent, or here's traditional? I mean, what's your baseline?
Yeah, and we looked at. Do you have those numbers, Dr. Benson? We looked at the increase from the old CIP to the new for Moncure was like $4.5 million. I believe 1.5 of that was due to inflationary costs, and the rest of it had to do, can you come up, please? Had to do with the design. So that's really the dollar question I think Mr. Millday is getting at. If we endorse the prototype, what is the dollar figure that we have now partner to come up with?
It's about $5 million. About $1.2 million is just increased cost to design and build, and the rest of it is the change in square footage. And there is an increase. It's not out of line with what you'll find in other elementary schools that have been built recently in the Commonwealth. Our kids' needs are changing. Our current elementary design specs are almost 20 years old. We have an increase in the area of autism. We are seeing an increase in our English language learners and an increase in our students on receiving free and reduced lunch, which typically is an indication of the level of support that they're going to need in order to be successful. So one of the key elements in this design spec is for us to look at collaborative spaces outside of the traditional classrooms such that we can pull small groups of students out to work with the adults that are in the building there to provide support. And not that we don't do that now. I don't want anyone to think that we don't, but we make use of whatever space is available. In some cases, it is a space in the hallway where we have children sitting on the floor and getting that additional support. If I could just make a connection to what this board did in supporting the change to the CIP that brought us the renovation at the Brook Point Library. It was not just about the space, but how we wanted that space to be used for young people in the building and teachers in the building. It has had a significant impact on the number of folks that are coming to the Media Center to work in collaborative groups or larger groups within classrooms, or to use the maker space that's there. Prior to renovation in November of 2014, we had just over 2,000 individual student visits during that month. Post-renovation, a year later, November of 15, we had almost 4,000 individual students to the library. We have tripled classes that have signed up to come and use that space. In November of 2014, we were somewhere in the 40s, 45, 47, something like that, and almost 3 times that post-renovation. So we're trying to look not just at whether it's an adequate space, but the design of the space and how it might improve the teaching and learning within the building. And we feel very strongly about the new elementary design and a need to, again, kind of change our expectations, given that we have been building and have successfully, efficiently. But like I said, those elementary design specs are almost 20 years old.
Mr. Cavalier, I think you were next.
Well, I support the change of concept here, and I think it makes some sense to me, particularly with respect to the community-based needs in addition to the ever-changing methods of teaching. But I do have a little issue here in, is this really necessary now for us to do? Because I see this as a fait accompli, in that the school board already voted to do this. I know some reductions can be made, but you brought up the fact about the Brook Point High School library and how that was done, and we had a lot of discussions about that before we eventually added it to the CIP, and that was done in a very good manner. This one I'm not so happy with, I guess, in that the change to the design was done by the school board knowing full well that we were at the limit of our CIP, your CIP, our CIP, the whole CIP. And when that came before the Finance and Budget Committee, Joint Finance and Budget Committee meeting at the last time, I tried to send the message back that, well, I'd like to see you take this out of your end of the CIP and not make it our proposed solution here. So to me, at this point, I don't know what this does by us taking a vote on it even today, because I think that the meat of it's going to be in, do we reallocate the CIP and the budget based upon the $8.3 million and the usage of those carryover funds. So to me, this is almost a task that we don't need to undertake, unless you can explain it to me otherwise, sir.
So, Mr. Cavalier, if I could add, and the thing is that it's also about timing, and that's part of the challenge that we have right now with the Moncure rebuild. If we're going to deliver the new Moncure rebuild on the current timeline, that's the issue. We need to be in design, and if there are changes in the amount of available revenue, capital funds, essentially to support the project, that certainly could be taken into consideration during the course of the design phase, but we would need to know relatively quickly what that's going to look like. Now, the project could be delayed. It certainly could be delayed a year, which would give us more time to work through those things. We haven't delayed significant maintenance at either Moncure or at Ferry Farm. However, there will be things that we need to do to keep the building, and we do have redistricting that we would need to figure out moving forward. I appreciate what Mr. Mildy said about there's no hard and fast kind of line drawn, and I'm not looking for us to do a grab of available resources, because I recognize there are other needs within the community. But I also realize that balancing the CIP is not something probably either one of us can do alone, and that we need to work together to figure out what's in the best interest of our community, and there likely will need to be some give, perhaps, on both sides.
But did during the discussion of the changes here for the new design concept, and this will extend into Ferry Farm Elementary School too, perhaps we do it modularly though, but was the point ever brought up that we're at our capacity level right now, and that this addition would pose a problem for us?
I think that was part of the conversation in terms of the challenges that we would have. So, at some level, we have to ask: do we want to build what we can build right now, or do we want to wait perhaps a little bit longer and build what we should be building for our young people? And it's not just about our kids either. It's about serving our community, and there are elements that are incorporated into this design to make the facility more accessible to folks after hours, and not compromise other portions of the building and being able to provide that kind of access. I think we're close. I think we're close to figuring out a way to get this done, if we can work on it together. And like I said, we're not looking to make a grab for those capital resources. I do think there are things that we could talk about moving forward that might enhance how we look at capital projects in the county as a whole together.
Mr. Snellings, I had you next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Benson, thank you for being here this afternoon. We have a great school system, and I attribute an awful lot of that to you. I'm very concerned about this for a couple of reasons. Number one, we've been talking about Annie E. Moncure School for how many years, the rebuild? And now we're at a point where it's got to happen quickly. Decisions have to be made. The second thing that I'm concerned about, and really concerned about, is that the school board, at their last meeting, and I watched every minute of it, made a decision to move forward with this. They even scheduled a community meeting, which will be held tomorrow night, before even coming to the board and saying, do you support it? Now, my question is, and maybe you can't answer, it might be unfair, what's going to happen if this board says no? I mean, are you back to square one? Do you go back to the old design, or help me?
That's certainly a possibility. I would hope not. And what I would hope is that we would work through whatever design changes would need to occur based upon what available funding there might be, and that we recognize as a school division that we have a responsibility to help figure out what that solution is. There are certain elements in here that we certainly could reduce moving forward. There are some that are really key, I think, to improving teaching and learning and student outcomes that I would hate to see be the first to go. For example, the collaborative spaces outside of the traditional classrooms so that we can work with small groups of children as need be from multiple classes within a grade level.
When did this design change come up? I mean, have you been talking about this for some time, or is this something that just fell out of the sky? Or?
It did not. It actually came about through our committee work in developing a new set of elementary design specs, recognizing that it's been some number of years since we have considered elementary school design and what are the changing needs of students within our community.
The other concern that I have in the chart that was provided in the background information, this is a chart that was presented to the school board. It showed our cost of building an elementary school versus Prince William. And even without this design change, we are considerably higher than Prince William, for example, in building a new school. We're considerably higher than most of our localities. I think one locality had a school that was higher than what we were building, but we're already considerably higher, and tacking on another 5.3 million, I think it is, that's going to put us way out of pocket compared to our
That's information that's pulled from Virginia DOE's website, and I pulled some additional information, the projects that are the 15-16 projects. One of the challenges you have in looking at the information that's provided by DOE is you don't know exactly what went into the school. A better indication perhaps might be to look at the cost per square foot, and we're right at about $190 per square foot. The other thing is that they roll that all up, including a site preparation, and that can vary greatly from one site to another. So there's a way, I think, for us to dig a little bit more deeply, and I appreciate, Mr. Snellings, what you're bringing to our attention, and that is that if you look at the bottom dollar amount that is published by Virginia Department of Education, it does appear that is the case. However, I think if we dive in a little bit more deeply in looking at how they arrived at those numbers and the decisions that were made about what actually went into the building, there's probably some lessons for us to be learned in terms of where we might be able to capture some savings. I do think that we do a good job with value engineering in terms of looking at trying to save as we build. That doesn't always mean that you're going to build the less expensive building, though. You want to take a look at the longevity and maintenance required for certain choices that you might make during the construction process.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mrs. Maurer?
One of the items that I wanted to point out was that in the spirit of shared services, you were planning on creating the gym facility so it could be utilized by Parks and Rec after hours, kind of moving us away from your buildings and our buildings and more one team, one fight. So do you know what amount of the design changes and incorporates utilization of the gym for Parks and Rec needs? Because if we want to, get into parsing, maybe that.
I do not, and I don't know if Mr. Rand can break that out at this point.
Yes, ma'am. I don't know specifically the cost of the breakout of the design, but I do know that approximately 1,100 square feet of the roughly 15,000 square foot add that the ed specs brings to the elementary school design is associated with enlarging the gym and making it so that we can have a small set of bleachers in there, a full-size gym, so that it accommodate after-school activities for the Parks and Recs programs.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Baumke?
Yeah, I think now, I think all my questions have been answered. So, thank you.
Advantage to wait until the end. Mr. Milday?
I don't know the answer to this question, but how much do Parks and Rec use elementary schools right now?
I don't.
And I don't want to speak for Kathy and Brian Southall, but from a facility use agreement, they focus mainly on the middle school gyms because they accommodate the
Okay, so
programs
I
better.
just wanted to-
So it's very little in like basketball, winter basketball.
Okay,
It's
so
very
there's-
little, I believe.
It's hard to quantify it, and it's, I don't know if there's any value there. But speaking of value, I mean, I think what your response has been is that there's a need, and that we should look at the value for the money spent. I mean, that's I'm not going to simplify too much. That is oversimplification, but that's what you were saying. And I have to ask this question, because I think you're great, and I mean that. Your budget request is so impressive. I feel like we owe you. I feel like I owe you for not having setting us up for the contentious fight we've had every year for the last every year I've been here on the board. But I have to ask this question. I want people listening when they say this is, when we talk about value and the needs. What are some of the projects that we're taking off of the CIP, of the $30 million worth of projects? Just throw some big ones out there, just so people have an idea what we compete with.
Well, those are your decisions, but we have a number of road projects
We have a
that
couple we already identified that are likely to be cut.
Brook Road, which was a bond project. Corporate Center Drive up at Quantico Corporate Center also will likely come off the list. And we've postponed a number of projects on the county side over the years.
So anyone that you want to name off?
Animal shelter, courthouse.
We just push them down. You know that problem. That we all face that problem. The one thing I would like to do, and I've brought it up before, and it's never gone anywhere, and I expect that's exactly what will happen right now. But I would like to see that when we have a discussion about transferring our school transfer every year, that we stop separating out, or at least that. And one part of the discussion should be holding the total value of debt service together, putting it together with the actual amount of operating fund money. That gives you a baseline, and somehow, because we've gotten in the habit when I was getting on the board of just insisting on putting the debt service separate. We just didn't really discuss it, and if we could somehow put that debt service back in with the transfer. For instance, give me an idea where we are with debt service right now in the current budget year. Debt service transfer and operating fund transfer for the school.
Debt service for us, it's like 31 million.
Is it 31?
And it goes up. Sometimes it can be but I mean the whole thing. It's exactly my point, is that I don't like them being separate. Add them together.
The 143.7 million in the current year.
That's both.
Yes, sir.
So, just to be taking a look, somehow if we could, that's one way to measure how much of you're competing, if you will. And I hate to say that, but it's a competition for other things: public safety, parks and rec, transportation projects. If there's a way that we can really measure that way, look at the percentage of increase from year to year, and it's gone up every year except for one in the last 10 years, if I'm not mistaken. And you can have, and we get savings sometimes. When we paid off this building, we saw some increased capacity for debt service. But maybe we could look at things that way. Is that unusual among school board systems? And I don't know, but it certainly seems like a common sense thing to do when you're talking about budgets. And I know we're talking about needs, but also when we're talking about money, I wonder if that's.
We're certainly open to that dialogue, and you're right, it is uncommon in conversations between local government and schools. But I would also suggest, Mr. Mildy, is that we're willing to look at doing things creatively as well, and we've identified a couple $1 million in infrastructure projects that we could move, as well as the potential to put some cash into Montcure and build the school the way it should be built.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Baumke?
Yeah, I just have one other comment. I mean, I don't know Griffiths Widewater very well, but it seems like it's, as I heard from Trav Berry when he sent that one bus driver out who'd never driven in the county before, and he said, "I'm sending you to Maryland." And she said, "Maryland? I'm working in Stafford County." He said, "You'll understand when you get to Griffiths Widewater." So, but my point is, that area is way far up there. I think that we, in the final analysis, even though this all costs money, we will be sorry that we don't have this additional gym for the people in that part of the county. They're not going to be driving down to the new Jeff Rouse facility. They're not going to be the new gym that they're proposing in there. And I'm just going to give you an example. When we looked at renovating the three schools, Falmouth, Grafton and Stafford Elementary, I was a big proponent of redoing the libraries. The libraries were old. They were ratty. The books were old. I mean, we needed a transformation at that point in time. In my mind, I was willing to cut anything else in the building, but the library, in my mind, was the most important. Scott, I'm sure you remember that conversation. So, yeah, it is a lot of money right now, but I feel it will be, and we're going to have to make some other changes in the budget, somewhere in the CIP. But I think in the final analysis, at some point in time, we have to make these decisions on behalf of the community. The question I have is, how much of the additional scope relates to architectural fees?
It would be essentially proportional, percentage-wise.
Okay.
Typically, for new design, for new construction, it's anywhere from 7.5% to 9.5% of the fee of the construction. So as the construction budget of the project dollars grows, in this case it increases, so proportionally with the design fee. So
Okay.
If we essentially, the entire project is increasing, the entire project budget is increasing roughly about $5.5 million. So proportionally, the design budget would be increasing. So again, the design budget is a percentage of the actual project cost, and then it actually is a percentage of the construction piece of that project budget.
Okay, that does. Okay, and then I go back to the value engineering conversation, because we had that discussion when we built Stafford High School. And I remember, Bob Thomas was in that meeting as well with the architect. And we were looking and talking to, about a lot of the cutouts on the building, about every time you have an angle on the outside, that costs money, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Have we looked at that from a value engineering
So again,
standpoint?
we haven't started the design. We've done the educational specs, and so the design,
And that's it.
As many of us, many of the board have referenced already, the board approved us to go forward with the design, and we have the ability to modify that design and reduce the amount of it in case the budget, we're not, as a group, a community, we're not successful in pursuing the budget as it relates to the new ed specs. So with that said, the value engineering process, it occurs at about the 35% portion of the design. So we have that built into the design process. We have a third-party value engineering firm come and puts a different set of eyes on the actual designs and says, hey, why don't you do these things differently, or you can save money here, or what have you. But that's by school board policy. We enacted that about 5 years ago into the policy where on a project that exceeds, I forget the actual dollar threshold, but it's our larger projects. If it exceeds that threshold, then we have to have a formal value engineering process. And again, as part of any process that we do, we have value engineering concepts throughout the entire design process. But this formally has a third-party value engineering effort.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Cavalier was next, sir.
Just a couple more questions. First of all, did our Parks and Rec staff
They were
identify this as a shortfall need, that we needed this community gym at this location?
I don't believe so. What we did, sir, we invited them to a meeting, and we went over our ed specs and says, would this be of value to the Parks and Recs community for us to have a gym that provides these services? And the answer was yes. But it was not to meet that I'm aware of, a known requirement out there.
Well, I can't imagine we would say no to
I agree.
extra space.
Agreed, sir. But again, there was never, that I'm aware of, a deficit that was identified. It could be, but I certainly don't want to speak for Parks and Rec.
Yeah, I would suggest in the future that you broach that subject early on in the venture. And then the second part of my question is, I read about the pre-K, pre-kindergarten space that's being created. Is that Head Start, or is that something else? I just don't know.
No, sir, it's not Head Start. This is and I don't want to speak out of my expertise, but again, this is instructional for special education students.
interject. I do know a little bit about it. There's one at Winding Creek, right? Where you have,
we have them throughout our elementary schools.
yeah, they have really great programs.
So
where
this
they
is
have
special
inclusive.
education pre-K?
Yes.
All right, enough said.
But all of them have inclusive. They're all inclusive classrooms. So half of them are special ed and half of them are what you'd call average children. And so they do specialized learning environments. They're pretty neat. Winding Creek.
But not specifically Head Start, which is economic in nature, right?
Head Start this is not the Head Start program.
Right, but that's based on.
Which is the program that we have at Melchers.
Right, and that's solely based on economics, not on.
At risk factors.
Not on.
Not in terms of necessarily special needs.
Okay.
Like I said, my other idea didn't go very far. But what about school systems like Prince William County who set a percentage of their new revenues to go towards operating expenses? Do they also have some type of a percentage they'd like to allow for CIP projects? Is that something you've seen where a district will likes to identify a range of?
There are divisions that set a specific percentage, and then there are divisions that sit down together and evaluate the projects, both schools and local government, using criteria that is agreed upon in a joint committee to do that evaluation.
Needs-based, right, needs-based. I know, and that's just as hard to do when you're not in a tax-raising area. I'd like to see, I don't know where this is going to go with this vote, but I'd like to see the trend as far as the percentage of our CIP that's been allocated over the last 10 or 15 years to the school CIP projects. And because I would like for you to be able to do whatever you want to do, as long as you are working within some type of agreed upon budget.
What we do, Mr. Mildy, right? What we do.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, please.
If I may, I think we're happy to work on that. The percentage right now is 62-38 in the adopted CIP, 62 schools, 38 county. The challenge that we have as a community is high school number 6. Because to do a project of that scale over 3 or 4 fiscal years, that will be the CIP. That will be the entire CIP during that time frame.
Anthony, I was told when the board voted for tearing down high school number 5 and rebuilding it that we wouldn't need a high school number 6 anytime soon.
Well, it's certainly in the out years of the CIP, and it may even be just in year 10. But as we get to that, and knowing that it's somewhere down the line, it's going to present a serious challenge to us in terms of how we fund it.
Your predecessors, I believe, had a kind of an extravagant propensity for building extravagant things or things that weren't necessary. I still maintain that since we have how many extra middle school seats do we have? The county, 1,500.
I don't have that number.
A lot, more than a school's worth, and so that's why I didn't support the beautiful new school in Widewater, the middle school there, and that's also why I didn't support the more expensive option of tearing down Stafford High. And I just don't. I am very, very leery of. But I appreciate that you would come to us. I almost feel like the reason I know when you come to me and ask us for an okay on something like this, you're doing it because you also know that this is very likely going to have a significant impact on costs. So that's all I have to say, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Snellings.
I'm a little curious about this gymnasium that we're building. I've had it compared to the Rouse Center, and they can't do it at Rouse Center, they can do it here. What is this gymnasium? Is anybody from Parks and Rec, or what's going to be offered there? Is it going to be weightlifting? And
No, sir. This is
and I don't mean to be facetious.
No, sir. No, sir. I would not characterize this gym space as anything extraordinary. It's elementary school gym space. It's not a cafetorium where we have a consolidated cafeteria and auditorium space together.
So what do you do in an elementary school gym space?
We do health and PE programs.
You do basketball?
In some small
you do
level.
calisthenics?
Yes, sir. And so
you don't have any special equipment there?
No, sir.
Stuff? Okay.
No, we have a stage normally for presentation that we co-locate in those. But this the picture a middle school gymnasium such as Stafford Middle that we recently built in addition about 6-7 years ago to an aux gym, and we made that gym large enough so that we could have a small set of bleachers in there. It's a small four-row set of bleachers on one side so that we can conduct Saturday basketball games, Parks and Rec's basketball games in there on a gym floor, on a wooden gym floor. That's kind of the vision that we see this. Again, it has a small room to support Parks and Rec so that they have their materials there, so they don't have to bring them in and out of the space. We have, we've also identified a bathroom that's open to the outdoors so that we don't have to facilitate having portalettes there when Parks and Rec uses the field. Those type of things that we're envisioning. But again, the space-wise is not anything significantly larger than your standard square gymnasium for any other program.
I guess my concern there is that this is a lot of money that will accommodate a very, very few people. A basketball game consists of 10 people.
Well, that's just one function, sir.
It's one function, but if you've got a basketball game going on, let's say you have a pickleball game going on, that's 15 people. So, and I'm not trying to be facetious. I'm trying to wrap my arms around this thing because this is a lot of expense. And not a lot of people in the community, that is, are going to be able to benefit from that gymnasium the way I see it, because there's nothing there. It's just a floor with some bleachers, basically, and 2 basketball hoops, unless I'm missing something. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Okay. They say the worst part about being the chairman is you have to wait till the end to speak, and it is hard to bite your tongue, as you gentlemen know.
Oh, go ahead, Bob.
Let me ask a question. I'll come back to you. I think what we have here is a heart and head issue. You know, the heart looks at the spec and says this is probably what we need to do. It's the right thing for the future. But the head part of us is like, how do we pay for this? And I know there's been a lot of conversations. There's a lot of options that are being thrown around. You know, maybe $2 million of that $3.5 million cash capital helps the deficit. You know, Duff Green Park maybe sliding to the right a year or two. Ferry Farm maybe sliding around as well. We've talked about phasing Ferry Farm. You know, building the first phase to the current capacity and then having an option later to, you know, put the rest of the school on. There's maybe $1.5 million savings there. What I'm getting at is I think if we're really close to having at least a draft, I know it's not something that staff would be able to commit to yet because it's not time for that, but we're really close to having a draft to present to my colleagues here that says, if you like the spec, here's how we're going to pay for it. I know we're not quite there yet, but my question to you is if we wait 2 weeks, because my job as a chairman is to make sure we make the most informed decision we can, and I don't think we're there yet. If we wait 2 weeks, how does that affect your timeline? I know you've already went out to design, and if we have you change that, we don't want to wait too long, but that's my question.
No, I think right now we're as Mr. Snelling mentioned, we're having some focus group meetings, not only with small group teachers, parents, with community engagement meeting tomorrow night. It's just to get input from all those groups, those particular groups. So we really haven't started the heavy lifting from the schematic stage. But again, that's not too far down the road. So I think 2 weeks for commitment from the board one way or the other would be it's certainly not detrimental to the process.
Right. And for you two gentlemen, would that 2 weeks buy us enough time to really get that rough draft of here's how we pay for this in the CIP? I know we're close.
Yes, we're going to propose a CIP on March 1st. Yes,
Perfect. Sir. Okay. So that's kind of where I see this headed, but we did have one more question, Ms. Baumke.
Okay, I need to clarify something. Okay, like at Falmouth Elementary years ago, they added a gym in the very back. The cafeteria is used for eating. The gym is used for educational PE space. Okay, I believe it's the same at Grafton. And what about at Ferry Farm? Okay, so all of our older schools have the gym space that we're proposing here. Our newer schools, I'm thinking of Conway, Rocky Run, Anthony Burns, that's where you eat and you do PE in the same room, and they don't have the additional gym space. Is that correct?
That's correct. I would say the aggregate space of the two spaces are fairly large, and they have that divider that goes through.
Right.
But, the older schools that have the separate gym that were added as part of the addition, those gymnasiums are smaller. They're not full basketball courts.
Correct.
They're smaller, so that's why they don't lend themselves to Parks and Recs using them as part of their user group programs.
Okay, but I think people on the board need to be aware that there is
that separation.
There is a separation.
Ms. Maurer?
So, Paul, I agree with what you have to say, and I think it's a fantastic concept on combining both the debt service and the operational funding, and I think it's something that the Finance and Budget Board should take up. Because one of the things that even if we level fund the schools this year, it's still an increase of $800,000 because of the debt service for Stafford High School. And so it's, I think if the schools had to share in this decision matrix process of what we build, how that's going to impact our annual budgeting, then maybe it would help them, help us. Together, we make those decisions, because if you think that it's going to cut into your operational funding instead of, it being separate and apart, it might assist in some of this decision-making process. And I think it's a great idea, at least something worth exploring.
Mr. Cavalier.
I generally support the concept, but I'm less than thrilled with the way this has come about. So I think between all the questions that we've had today, that I'm going to move to defer this for 2 weeks.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes. Tally the vote. That motion passes 7-0.
Is that going to be the end of the conversation about what Wendy and I were just discussing, or is there any way to?
We're going to bring it up in finance. And
So it will be brought up. I didn't know if you had said it should be or it was going to be. Okay, thank you.
I'm on that committee, so.
Okay, number 13, Finance and Budget, discuss reappropriation of the school's FY 2015 carryover funds.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, this was briefed at the FAB earlier today. This is a discussion item for the board's discussion today and possible action at a future meeting. This is FY 15 carryover funds from Stafford County Public Schools. The school board and the superintendent have sent over a request for those funds to be reappropriated. The board had already reappropriated $1,150,000 as part of the FY 16 budget process, and then that was done that was put into effect at the mid-year review. So we're dealing with the balance of that. That would go $836,000 for school buses, $1,850,000 for infrastructure projects, $2,150,000 to pay for the school's finance system to pay the debt on that. About $250,000 for driver's ed vehicles and school furniture, and then $3.5 million, which we discussed earlier, which would establish the capital projects reserve for the schools. The Board of Supervisors, in amending a financial policy late last year, set a $1.5 million balance, and that's why we'd indicated that $2 million of the $3.5 would be available to go as cash towards school capital projects. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Mr. Mildy.
Remind me, is the establishing of schools capital projects reserve something that also helps with the county's debt service, debt rate, bond rating?
Absolutely. And the funds are, we have a capital projects reserve for the county as well as one for the schools now. Thanks to your amendment, that's absolutely something we'll be talking to the rating agencies about this summer. Any expenditure out of that would need to be appropriated by the Board of Supervisors.
Well, that's great. I should put it all in there.
Mr. Snellings.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This resolution includes $2 million for Antiem and Cure. So would we defer this for 2 weeks, or would we pull out that part of it for 2 weeks?
This is new business, so I'm not looking for action today. This was just, let the board kind of take a peek at it, and we're going to try to get back to that policy where we take 2 weeks. Mr. Milday?
But what you just said was, if we put it in there, they still have to come to us to spend it. Correct? So you could actually support this without, it doesn't not automatically put the $2 million at Antiem on Cure. Am I right or wrong about that?
It wouldn't have to. The draft resolution says that, but we can change it.
All right. Well, I actually was just joking. I can support this.
Ms. Sellers, do you have a question?
Yeah, well, I made the same already had the same question in the FAB, and it's looking at remembering this is cash, and that always seems to be something we're all looking for come budget time, and $260,000 for cars and school furniture. I'd like to know more about that, what we're spending that on. And I asked the sheriff's department the same thing last year. That's cash money that we could put somewhere else if we need to, so I'd like to see what that is.
Okay, other questions? I did have one question. I keep hearing from the community that they'd like us to wait on the forensic audit. So do we know when that might be completed and how that may or may not mesh up with this vote here? I know they're not necessarily.
No. Well, I mean, it's in progress. I don't know that I could say that it will be done in 2 weeks, but I could check with our attorney.
Okay, just an estimate would be good.
In response to Ms. Seller's question, what we have proposed are the funds to actually go towards instruction-related capital needs. So 5 of the vehicles would be for driver's ed vehicles, which right now our vehicles are way past their life cycle. They're starting to fall apart. And so that would be at about $19,000 each. That would be $95,000 of the $262,000 for that. And then the other $195 would be actually for classroom furniture, which we've been finding has been starting to degrade as well. And so that would allow us to do some things with classroom furniture at various levels in various schools.
Are all these on a replacement cycle now?
I would say they are on an informal type of replacement cycle. What we've had difficulty with is keeping up with both of these.
Okay.
Yes, they do. They should have. We should have a plan directed to this, and I think we recognize now through this year's budget development process that that's something that we want to work more closely with Mr. Horan on.
Okay.
Because the schools have all kinds of needs. It funnels through him, and then we try to work on funding them as we have funds available. We just have not in our budget been able to fund the level of needs and requirements that we've had on an annual basis every year.
Right. Well, thanks.
Mrs. Baumke?
Yes, one of the projects, not on this list, but on a list that my counterpart, Scott Hiron, sent me, shows like the repair of the fire alarm system at Colonial Forge, and it shows $150,000 of a total project of $1.2 million. Can you help explain the fire alarm? Are we replacing the entire system there? Okay.
Yes, this list, there's actually a 7th project, which is the fire alarm that's in there. We decreased one of these other projects to make room for that because of the urgent need of that fire alarm system. I mean, it is functioning, but our fire and rescue folks, Andrew Milliken, it specifically, has been working very closely with us for the last year and a half, keeping that system going. He's been pushing us very hard to replace it. And we tried to look at it as part of the additions, the high school, but we were unable to fund it as part of that. And so we included it in this particular list.
So that's pretty standard that a fire alarm system just doesn't last forever.
There's a life expectancy on those.
Okay.
What happens, we're finding with Colonial Forge's fire alarm system, is that it's becoming very unsupportable. The pieces and parts needed to keep it going when they do fail are being harder to find. And quite frankly, the company that provided that particular system is very proprietary. And in today's world, you don't want to be proprietary. And
Right.
so it's very difficult to work with them. Not to say that's the reason we're replacing it, it's
Right.
because it's very, very difficult to find pieces and parts to replace that. And it's
And that
basically
school's what, 15 years old now?
2000, so 15 years,
2000,
yes, ma'am.
okay. All right.
1999.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
And that's included in the $1,850,000 for the
Right.
O&M infrastructure projects, that $250,000 project.
Okay, any further questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll have this back at the next meeting for potential action. Thanks for coming over today and spending the better part of your afternoon with us.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, if I might, I really like being here, okay? And I'm telling you, if I had been here 5 years ago, okay, some of these issues that are issues today wouldn't be issues, okay? Because we're trying to become more sustainable and predictable moving forward. And so these issues with things like replacement cycles, it's just not there. If we had implemented this compensation model for teachers 5 years ago, we would have additional resources to go into other areas, and we would be very competitive. So we have more work to do. There's no question about that. But we're going to do it, right? And I'm guessing being fastest superintendent of Virginia is not going to make the wall at the swim center. Just saying. Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'll entertain a motion for a closed meeting.
Whereas the board desires to hold a closed meeting for one, discussion of the award of a public contract involving the expenditure of public funds and discussion of the terms of scope of such contract, where discussion in open session would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the Board of Supervisors, and two, discussion of the performance of a specific public employee of the Board of Supervisors, and whereas pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3711A29 and A1, such discussions may occur in closed meeting.
Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Snellings. Please cast your vote. Tally the vote. Motion passes 7-0. Board will now convene a closed session. Do we have a motion to certify?
So move.
Second.
We have a motion to second. Please cast your votes. Tally the votes. Motion passes 7-0. Ms. Mauer made the motion. Ms. Sellers seconded the motion. Ms. Sellers is recognized for an additional motion.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make the motion. I don't have a number on here, but a resolution to express a vote of confidence in the county administrator. Would you like me to read the whole thing?
It's in the add-on folder.
Okay, whereas the board desires to recognize the hard work and dedication of the county administrator, Anthony J. Romanello, and whereas the board desires to express its confidence in the performance and leadership of the county administrator. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Stafford County Board of Supervisors on this, the 16th day of February 2016, that the county administrator, Anthony J. Romanello, be and he hereby is recognized and commended for his untiring public service on behalf of the citizens of Stafford County, Virginia. His dedication to the professional and ethical conduct of his duties and his selfless personal attention to the many requirements of his position. And be further resolved that the county administrator, Anthony J. Romanello, be and he hereby is given a vote of confidence to continue to perform his duties in the public service of the citizens of Stafford County, Virginia.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Baumke. Any discussion? Please cast your vote. Tally the vote. The motion passes 7-0. Okay, the board will be in recess until 7 p.m. Good evening. At this time, I'd like to call the evening session of the February 16, 2016 meeting of the Stafford County Board of Supervisors to order. At this time, please stand while Supervisor Mauer leads us in invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Supervisor Cavalier.
Can we all bow our heads and please join me in prayer? Worshipful Father, Master of the universe, we ask for your blessings as we, of various faiths and cultures, come together as representatives of the great citizens of Stafford, assembled to do their bidding through your watchful eyes. Give us the strength to make sound decisions laced with judgment and compassion. Allow us to be frugal with our coffers, mindful that the labor of a man and woman allows for minimal expense and the maximum return in services and representation. May we be an example worthy of the children of this region who one day will carry on our humble efforts in your name. Amen.
Amen.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, we will have presentations by the public. Anyone wishing to address the board will be able to do so at this time. When you come to the podium, please state your name and address. When the green light comes on, you have 3 minutes. The yellow light indicates you have 1 minute remaining, and the red light indicates your time has expired. I have no speaker cards, so anybody in the chambers wishes to address the board on a topic that is not covered by a public hearing tonight, please come forward. Mr. Trimmer?
My name is Glenn Trimmer. I live at 65 Marlboro Point Road, and I just wanted to address the board. I understand this issue wasn't acted on today, but it concerns the issue of the so-called the unspent money from the school board, or the so-called found money. and the question about whether you would approve them getting back the $4.26 million that they've asked for in unspent funds. My background, 25 years in the Air Force, and working for Boeing and General Dynamics. And we always had a rule: if you didn't spend the money by the end of the year, you lost it, and it would be reassessed the following year. I think you should think seriously about that option, and I'd like to give you a little bit of a counter option, or why I think that. For one, it's the second big mistake. There was a $5 million thing just like this a few years before that. You don't make people more fiscally responsible by giving them a bonus every time they do it. You should think seriously about that. Now, there's been a couple articles in the paper, and I think there's a problem you can solve here that was in today's paper, where they say that there's great news. There's going to be more revenues from Stafford this year than in the past, and it's a pretty good sized number. But then they give you the bad news. It says if you add up everything that all your departments have asked for and what the school superintendent has asked for, when you do all that, it comes to $6.5 million that you got to find. You got $8 million from the school board if you choose to use it. You should choose to use that, because if you do, this would increase the general fund by $8 million, and you could go ahead for the first time, give every department what they're asking for, and then you could put them to the test. Did you really deliver and do for the community what you're proposing? And besides that, you'd have $1.7 million left. What I'd propose you do with that is open it up definitely to to a public hearing, and allow the public to come forward and say, look, if you in the public have a proposal that's $40,000 or less that you think would really help the public, really benefit, children and schools or whatever, come in with cost and present it to the board, and then you guys look at all those and you decide which ones are best. I think you have a great opportunity here to open up the process to people, to make everybody comfortable with what has happened, and to put a level of accountability into the school board. You'll still fund the school board superintendent's budget. That's what the paper says anyway. I know everybody always tells me, well, the Freelance Star is not always right, but I don't have many sources. I sincerely ask you to consider this. I think it would be a good thing for the county. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Trimmer. Anyone else in the chambers wish to address the board? Okay, seeing none, we will close presentations by the public, and the next item is item 14. Planning and zoning, consider a partial plat vacation for the Ambrose Estates subdivision in the Heartwood District.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Board members, I'm Jeff Harvey, the Director of Planning and Zoning. The request has been made by Brighton Homes, who owns Lot 7 within the Ambrose Estates neighborhood. The Ambrose Estates neighborhood is located adjacent to Lake Mooney Reservoir within Heartwood District. The property in particular, Lot 7, is located north end of Everett Lane within the neighborhood. That's the main street within the neighborhood. The properties within the subdivision are zoned A1 agricultural, so they're all at least 3 acres in size. There were 12 lots in the total subdivision, and 6 lots of the subdivision have frontage along the lake and are affected by a plat restriction. That plat restriction specifically states that they would have a 200-foot wide buffer adjacent to the reservoir. The location map here to the right shows where the subdivision is off of Green Bank Road, as well as the proposed Lot 7 in relation to the reservoir. This is a copy of the subdivision plat from the time that the subdivision was created. The subdivision was first approved by the Planning Commission in a preliminary form in 2011. During the time when the application was being reviewed by staff before it made it to the Planning Commission, the board and Planning Commission were debating about creating a reservoir overlay zoning district. As part of that reservoir overlay zoning district, it's stipulated that there would be a buffer, 200-foot buffer adjacent to any reservoir within the county. Ultimately, that ordinance was never adopted, but the applicant for the subdivision at the time proposed the buffer. And you can see by my drawing here that this is the general location of the buffer. Now, I will note that the county already has a resource protection area, which goes along any tidal water body or perennial stream or standing body of water. So this is an additional protection above beyond what the current RPA is. The area in the blue box is highlighting where the platted drain field was. Back in March of last year, Brighton Homes had submitted a building permit application for Lot 7, and that building permit application modified the drain field location to where a part of the reserve drain field would be located within the reservoir buffer. And that led to them eventually asking for the partial plat vacation request, which would affect the entire subdivision plat. In reviewing it, staff would note that, again, the application, there has been no reservoir overlay district established. The staff believes that the existing 200-foot wide buffer would provide some water quality protection for Lake Mooney. And by having that buffer, there would be restrictions through the building permit review process, which would prohibit placement of buildings, structures, and drain fields within the buffer. If the board is inclined to grant the partial plat vacation, it would do so pursuant to Ordinance 016-11, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Mr. Mildy?
Jeff, I'm curious why you have reservations. Is it just simply water quality?
In consulting with the utilities department, that is their main concern, is about water quality for the reservoirs.
Yeah, everywhere else on all of our other reservoirs, including everywhere outside of this particular lot, it's just 100-foot CRPA, correct?
Correct. This is the only subdivision that has this recorded restriction on it.
So they would like to, but then that means they would like to kind of see another 100 feet added if they could around all of our reservoirs. Would that be a logical assumption to make?
Well, I've had some discussions with the utilities department staff about the possibility of bringing back another reservoir ordinance, but it would mainly apply to new development, not existing approved projects. And that's one of the goals in our comprehensive plan, is to establish a reservoir protection zone in the county.
Mr. Snellings?
So no other, we have 3 reservoirs, and none of them have a buffer at the present time except for this one particular parcel. Is that correct?
Yes, this is the only subdivision that has that additional protection.
And I guess maybe utilities might want to come forward, because I do have some utility questions, but Able Lake has been open for over 30 years. There is no buffer. There are homes all the way around it. I don't know of has there ever been an instance where we've had a water quality issue at either Able or Smith Lake because of drain field problems?
There has not, I mean, as far as I'm aware. I also don't know if there are any drain fields in that 200-foot zone, but.
Well, I know there are houses around Able Lake.
There are houses.
There are houses around Able Lake. What other protections, since these reservoirs are not fenced off, excuse me, since they're not fenced off, I mean, animals go in them. I've been down to Able Lake, and there'd be a dead deer floating in the water. I know we have rabid foxes from time to time. They go to water. I can't prove it, but I'm sure they've had one die. What protects the water quality when something like that happens?
Our staff does monitor the lake, and they go out, and if they see anything like that, they'll pull it out of the lake. They also put in chemicals to reduce the algae and stuff like that. We try to have a buffer area around it so that we don't have those kind of things happen. Obviously, wildlife are going to go where wildlife are going to go, but we try to monitor to make sure that we don't have drums or barrels that get dumped in the area or anything like that. And just the more nature and trees and stuff that you can have before the lake, the more buffer you have of anything that could run off into it.
So our filtration system is not good enough to handle any contaminations?
It depends on the quantity. Obviously, our filtration can handle sediments like that, but if you get bacteria at levels that are high enough, then you can have a problem, or oils or anything like that. So we're just trying to keep it from growing. If you get a large amount of bacteria or E. coli into the lake, once it's in there, it's hard to get it out.
But you're talking about one lot and a backup drain field, and only partial of that is in it. So in my mind, I don't think you could have much risk of contamination, but that'll be after we have comment time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Other questions? Mr. Mildy?
It's kind of a fun thing to run down. I mean, It seems to me I could probably take a bucket full of E. coli, pour it right into the reservoir, and it would be, I mean, the Potomac River supplies water to half of Fairfax County and D.C. area. I mean, God only knows what's going on the Potomac River. I mean, boats and large boats and industrial fleets and all kinds of stuff. I mean, we can get the stuff, you're taking out, we're not at risk. We're not just waiting for some saboteur to dump something dangerous into our reservoirs, right? I mean, I'm under the impression that we can get this stuff out.
We do have technology that can get a lot of that out. However, we'd like to keep the lake as pristine as possible.
And we have septic systems that are somewhere around the Virginia, if maybe we got lucky at Lake Abel, but septic systems, there was a time before you had to have a 100-foot setback, right? So we have septic systems right up against the Potomac River and reservoirs in Virginia.
I'm sure there are, yes.
This thing would still be at least 100 feet off.
Right.
And built to a standard.
A river and a lake are two different things. A lake is basically...
Okay, well, let's stick with lakes. I'm imagining that in Virginia there are plenty of
I'm
lakes
sure there are.
that predate the 1982.
And there are lakes that have had water quality problems, rivers and streams that have water quality problems that DEQ is designated as tainted, and
It just costs more to clean them. I mean, is that what happens once you get something in there, you can't get it out?
depending on the level, if it's high enough, then we wouldn't be able to use it as a water source.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Do we have a applicant's representative? Yes, we do. Mr. Payne, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and other members of the Board of Supervisors. My name is Charlie Payne with law firm Herschel Fleischer, and we represent the applicant. We're located at 725 Jackson Street in the city of Fredericksburg. Just to want to thank staff for its presentation. I think it's covered most of the facts and the details here regarding this request. I just kind of want to just bring this kind of down a little bit to earth in regards to what's being requested here. We're talking about one lot. The only development in the whole county that's impacted by this reservoir buffer that doesn't even exist in your ordinance. The timing on when this occurred was obviously when they were going through the Planning Commission to get their preliminary plan approval, and there was this discussion obviously at the time about passing this ordinance by the Planning Commission and by the Board of Supervisors, which never occurred. So when the applicant's here before a Planning Commission, they go, hey, by the way, we've got this pending ordinance going forward. Would you be willing to add that buffer in since you're sort of ahead of the ordinance being approved? And that's what happened. So the ordinance wasn't approved. So no other development in the county, including developments around Lake Mooney, have this buffer. And if you think about the development and where it is today, lots 3 through 8 are impacted by this reservoir buffer, but all of those lots are completed. Lot 4 is under construction except for lot 7. And if you look at lot 7, it's an oddly configured lot. It's truly constrained up against the cul-de-sac, if you will, because of this buffer. It's a 4-acre lot. If you take into account all the easements and you subtract the acres from that, it's like under 2 acres. So what the developer, the owner, who is a subsequent owner of the property, had a buyer who came and said, look, I'd really like to reconfigure the footprint so that we can actually get away from the cul-de-sac and get away from the stormwater management facility. And by the way, this is a reserve drain field that's within the alleged buffer area, and it's about 15 to 20 feet. So we're not talking about parking this thing up against the RPA buffer. This is really still set back quite a distance from that area. So I just want to make sure we take that into account as well. Also, which is really important, as we all know our neighbors and what our neighbors think and feel about these type of issues, the developer, the owner, did go to all the neighbors and asked them to sign off on the original deed of vacation, which they did. Subsequent to that, one of the folks sold their house, but when we went back to talk to them about signing the deed of vacation, because we thought this would be all handled administratively, we discovered that actually 2 of the lots within the subdivision were obviously dedicated to the county, and that's why we're here before you. So I just wanted to clarify those 2 points. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, we'll open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to address the board on this topic will have an opportunity to do so. When you come to the podium, please state your name and address. The green light indicates you have 3 minutes, the white light is 1 minute, or yellow light is 1 minute, and the red light indicates your time has expired. Anyone in the chambers wish to address the board? Thank you.
Yes, I do. My name is Steve Grimes. I currently live in Ruther Glen, and that's because we formerly were in North Stafford. We're the future homeowner at Lot 7. And since this has come up, we've basically been temporarily living for about the last 7 months down there trying to go through this process. I just want to highlight a few things. First, thank you for your attention. It's great when you have meetings like this in which you can have different views and opinions about what's going on. You can sort it out and come to some sort of conclusion. I hate to step forward too much because I think it's been articulated pretty well, but I just want to give you a little background. When we first looked at Lot 7, we wanted to move. I'm retired military, decided to retire here in Stafford. We've been here 13 years. I've worked in the Pentagon, made the run up and down 95. And we decided we wanted to stay here, kids out of school. So when we looked at Ambrose Estates, what challenged us about Lot 7, but what attracted it to us is it's a very wooded lot. There's quite a few other easements there that were spoken about. There's a VDOT easement on it. You have your normal setbacks, the stormwater management. And then we saw this buffer line. And as we went to try to place the house, we realized there's a lot of constraints here. And as we looked into what this buffer line was, I think as Mr. Snelling's articulated and Mr. Payne, we couldn't find anywhere else. So our concern was that until that's defined, we buying a home, it's a pretty major investment for us, trying to understand what we could and couldn't do on the lot. I mean, could literally we put a shed on the other side of this? Could we put tables? And actually that kind of thing was sort of kicked around as maybe you could or couldn't. So our main point is trying to get some clarity about what you can, because a plat's a legal document. We have a concern here now is buying the home. We have concern for future buyers. And having that sort of clarity allows us to understand what we're buying into. 4 acres may come down to be really only 2. And so given the conversation here, we understand stormwater management and water quality is important in the community. We support that. But I think you've heard, and our feeling has been that the provisions are there for that type of thing, and they've been demonstrated over time in the county. So that's what we'd ask is your support for that. I wanted to thank a few people here because though this has gone back and forth, Mr. Harvey, rest of the utility staff on the other side here, and a lot of folks in the county have really helped out trying to get the vacating process forward. Though it's taken some time, it's been something we found both illuminative for us as citizens, slightly displaced in Carrollton County right now, but coming back. But also along the notion of that it's decisions that you all make eventually for us. And this is a big impact. It sort of changes our state. And we wouldn't have been at this for a year and a day now. When we first signed the contract, from the time we sold our home, we knew we'd be temporarily out of quarters to now. If we didn't think that in the end, what we think is the right result would occur. So Mr. Snellings took some time, came out, walked that lot with us, sort of got a feel for what this looks like. So I wanted to thank him, the staff in general, and Brighton Homes for really staying with us on this. It just shows that when you work together, a lot of things come up, and it ultimately is your decision to make. So I want to thank you for that, and I'd like to thank my wife for her patience for the last year and a day.
Thank you.
If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
We can't do that, but thank you. Anybody else in the chamber wish to address the board? Okay, seeing none. I assume the applicant doesn't want to rebut that. Okay, so we will close the public hearing and bring it back to the board. This is in the Hartwood District.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would like to motion for ordinance 016-11, which would vacate the plat.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Sellers. Ms. Sellers, sorry. Please cast your vote. Tally the vote. That motion passes 7-0. Okay, next on our agenda is item number 15, Planning and Zoning, amend the Garrisonville Road Service District to consider inclusion of Stafford Village Center and PT&D zoning district, the Rock Hill, Garrisonville, and the Griffiths Widewater District.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jeff Harvey again. The board is to consider with this public hearing adoption of ordinance 016-08, which would amend the Garrisonville Road Service District. The Garrisonville Road Service District was first adopted in 2007. It's been since modified in 2014 and is being requested to be modified again. Based on state law, the district has to be modified whenever there's a change in zoning on a piece of property. Back in October, the board approved the Stafford Village Center rezoning, which would allow that property to be zoned PT&D. During that rezoning, the applicant proffered that they would be willing to participate in the Garrisonville Road Service District. As such, we had to amend our ordinance to include that parcel as well as include the PT&D zoning district as an eligible zone for the additional taxation which is collected by this service district. The purpose of the service district is to collect taxes from additional real estate value for improvements to Garrisonville Road. That's how we've been funding our last several widening projects and also the current widening project that we're undergoing today. In looking at the overall ordinance, there are some minor changes, as I mentioned, 2 of them with regard to the district and the parcel, but also 2, it would clarify that in the PT&D zone, the tax collection would only apply to the commercial portions of a mixed-use project, because the Stafford Village Center has both multifamily residential units as well as commercial uses. In adoption of the district, the board has set out that it only wanted to consider this additional tax on commercial properties to fund the Garrisonville Road widening. Staff would recommend adoption of ordinance 01608. Be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions? Seeing none, we are also the applicant, so we will skip that, and we will now open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to address the board on this topic may have an opportunity to do so. When you come to the podium, please state your name and address. The red light indicates your time has expired. Is there anyone in the chambers wishing to address the board on this topic? Hearing none, we will close the public hearing and bring it back to the board. Anybody in one of those 3 districts care to make a motion?
Motion to approve, but I don't know.
So Ms. Sellers is making a motion to approve 016-08.
There you go.
Do we have a second? Second by Mrs. Mauer. Do we have any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I would note that the ordinance has an open effective date, and the board would
Oh, that's
put
true.
a date in
We
there.
need to set the effective date.
We need to come up with a date. What do you got?
It can be effective as of adoption, but there is a blank in the ordinance.
Is there a specific staff recommendation or just
I don't have one. I would direct that to Mr. Harvey.
make it today? You accept a friendly amendment and the seconder as well? Okay. So we have 016-08 as amended to make today the effective date. Please cast your votes. Tally the vote. That motion passes 7-0. Next, we have item number 16, planning and zoning. Consider a conditional use permit to allow a telecommunications facility in the A1 agricultural district on tax map parcel 35-37V in the Hartwood district.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This case is application CUP 15150-828, known as Verizon Wireless at Smokehouse. Smokehouse is the name of the location that Verizon uses for its planning purposes. The use permit is for a telecommunications facility in A1 agricultural zoning district. Specifically, it will be a communications tower with associated equipment. The applicant, as I mentioned, is Verizon Wireless. Mr. Payne is here tonight to represent them, and the owner is Junior P. Toomey. This is a aerial photograph that shows the site location. As you can see, it's off of Alcott.
Computer, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Please proceed.
As you can see from the image, it's located off of Alcott Way, which is off of Spotted Tavern Road. The area in general is wooded and rural. This site in particular is a wooded site with one residence on the property. This is the land use for the surrounding area. The comprehensive plan suggests this area be for rural and agricultural uses. All the surrounding zonings are also zoned A1 agricultural, like the subject property. This is a map that shows the current coverage for the cell phone coverage and internet coverage for wireless communications in this area. And this shows the change in coverage once this tower would be up and operational. As you can see, it would have a lot more cohesive coverage area for the Hartwood Road territory and would benefit the neighbors and traveling public in that area. This image, it tries to illustrate Alcott Way in the fact that it's fairly long back to the individual location that we're dealing with today. Also, it's a privately maintained road, and I'll get to some of the details with regard to that in discussion of the conditions. This is the site location in relation to the property. As you can see from this diagram, these are the existing structures on the property. This is the nearest dwelling to the proposed tower location that's not on the subject property. It's well outside the fall zone, which is a recommendation in our comprehensive plan for cell phone towers. Basically, the fall zone is the yellow circle, so there are no buildings or structures within that area. In the review of the application, the Planning Commission felt that it met the overall standards for compliance, even though the proposed fall zone is outside the property line. The applicant has committed that the design of the structure would be engineered so that it would fall in on itself, so it would not fall beyond the limits of the property line. You can also see from this diagram that Alcott Way extends beyond the site and continues on to an adjacent property to the rear. This is an aerial view of the property, which shows its proximity to a major power transmission line in the area. One of our things recommended in the comprehensive plan is that for location criteria, we try to locate these types of facilities in or near major transmission lines, because it would reduce some of the visual impact, since transmission lines typically have tall towers. Another tower in that area would not be as visibly obtrusive. This is a elevation view of what the tower might look like, with exception of, since the time the item went to the Planning Commission, the applicant heard concerns from the commission that they felt that this tower should accommodate up to 5 carriers. The applicants agreed to that, but the original diagram only showed 3. The proposed height of the tower would be 170 feet tall, and the compound would be about 2,500 square feet in size. And the compound would be fenced and secured and have appropriate screening pursuant to all the standards for these types of facilities. Yes, sir.
Go back. I have to ask, how do you design a pole like this to fall in on itself?
Well,
I'm just dying to know.
In the case of monopoles, and I guess if there are engineers here, you can probably give more detail than I'm aware of, but monopoles typically come in sections, and you have the widest section at the base, and it gets narrow at the top. And from what I understand, they're designed to fall in on themselves or fold over on themselves.
Fold over.
And sometimes that's may be similar to lattice towers. Sometimes they're designed to fold in on themselves rather than fully collapse.
All right, thank you.
And these are some images you probably saw in the staff report that showed the visuals of what this tower might look like from different road segments. As I mentioned, the current parcel is primarily wooded, and there are other wooded parcels around, so that helps screen the majority of the view. This view is from Spotted Tavern Road. This is another view from Spotted Tavern Road, and you can see again how it blends into a little bit into the construct of looking at the electrical towers. And this one is from Stonehouse Road. With regard to the conditions, we have recommended standard conditions that apply uniformly throughout all tower CUPs. Specifically, that's for this purpose, that there be only 1 tower permitted on the property, and that'd be 170 feet tall at its maximum. The site would have to conform with the generalized development plan. In this particular case, we're stipulating that there be no lights on the tower unless the FAA requires it. Typically, the FAA does not require light on a communication tower unless it's at 200 feet or above. We've had other towers that have been close to Stafford Airport where the airport themselves requested lighting. In this case, we're suggesting there be no lighting. Also, that there be limitation that there be no signs on the tower unless they're authorized by the FCC, a federal or a state agency. So the tower couldn't be used for advertising purposes because of its visibility. Also provisions that if the tower ceases use, that they would notify the county specifically and let us know. And then we would also have a security in place that that tower could be removed if the applicant or owner of the tower doesn't remove it in a timely manner. Other conditions speak to the 5 carriers that I mentioned earlier. Generally, there are 5 typical broadband / cell phone carriers that operate in Stafford County, and this could potentially accommodate all of them. Also, we would require an as-built plan to verify that the tower is not any taller than it's authorized to be when it's finally constructed, that any frequencies of equipment on this tower will not interfere with the regional airport or the county's 911 system. Also, if we want space for our 911 system or any other county-related facility, that we could have free space on the tower and a free ground lease for up to 30 years. And also during the discussion with the Planning Commission, there were some concerns about the maintenance of Alcott Way. Since it's a private gravel road, the applicant is committed to, and it's been put into conditions that Alcott Way would be returned to its condition pre-construction, so it's not all the heavy equipment doesn't degrade the road. And then finally, if there's any problems with the conditional use permit for violations of the conditions or any federal or state or local regulations, that the board at a future date could revoke the permit. Staff and the Planning Commission in its deliberations has recommended approval of the permit pursuant to R15-411. I will note that the board has a deadline to meet the federal requirements to approve or deny the permit by June 10th.
Any questions for staff?
Mr. Chairman, is this one of the ones that the contract we put in place found? What's the name of that? Okay.
Milestone. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, the correct reso number is R1641.
Oh, applicant like to speak to this?
Mr. Chairman and other members of the Board of Supervisors, my name is Charlie Payne, law firm Herschel Fleischer. We're located at 725 Jackson Street in the city of Fredericksburg, and forgive me if I cough. I hope I won't. I was with a couple of 5-year-olds and a 7-year-old this past weekend, and they got me. So as much as I try to avoid getting sick, they got me this weekend. So if my voice breaks, forgive me. I just thank staff for, I think, covering most of what's relevant in this application. I'll just try to cover a few additional points. One, there is a comp plan compliance requirement that the Planning Commission must look at before it gets to your level. Obviously, that passed the Planning Commission 7-0. It was also in compliance with your telecommunications plan. Even though this is a 52-acre site, we're only using about 0.6 acres, so we're taking about 2,500 square feet and utilizing the heavy, dense wooded area around us to help visually make this attractive. We are near a large 100-foot wide Dominion electric facility, so this is in a very rural area and near similar electronic facilities. And Mr. Harvey handled the collapsing upon itself question right. The monopole has been designed and is designed today for most, if not all, cell towers to collapse upon itself. In addition to that, I think the closest residence is about close to 500 feet away, so even if it did not collapse upon itself, it wouldn't be falling on any residence. There is a requirement to look at other locations. We did look at other locations to the north and south, but if you, in your packet, you'll see there's a propagation study that shows where the gap is. So this covers that gap between both Skyline Drive and the Stork area cell tower facilities. And we did talk to Dominion as well about co-locating on their facility. They disallowed us from doing that, claiming that structurally we could not do that on their site. Again, and one of the key, obviously, to having broadband and having cell service in our rural area is the fact that their telecommunication plan encourages that, and obviously this fills a gap in our rural area. And we're in agreement with the conditions that have been established by staff and approved by the Planning Commission. And I always like to remind everyone, because there's always questions about radio frequency waves, et cetera, that is governed by the FCC. The DEQ also regulates these towers, and of course, local ordinance regulates. There's three layers of regulation on these type of towers. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions of the applicant? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
At this time, we'll open the public hearing. Anybody wishing to address the board on this topic will have an opportunity to do so. When you come to the podium, please state your name and address. The green light indicates you have 3 minutes, yellow light 1 minute, and red light indicates your time has expired. I have no speaker cards. Anyone in the chamber wish to address the board on this topic? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the board. This is in the Heartwood District. Mr. Snellings, what's your pleasure?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would make a motion to approve proposed resolution R16-41.
Do I have a second? Second. Second by Mrs. Mauer. Please cast your votes. Any discussion? Sorry. Tally the vote. Motion passes 7-0. Okay, item number 17, Planning and Zoning, amend Stafford County Code regarding outdoor music events.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This public hearing would adopt ordinance 01609, which would amend portions of Chapter 4 of the county code dealing with outdoor music events. This proposed amendment would make the application process more closely aligned with the realistic expectations that someone who's proposing these types of events could have, and as well as setting forward a more clear process for the review. Currently, the code stipulates that if anybody wants to have an outdoor music event with more than 25 people, they must make an application at least 21 days in advance of the event. It also stipulates within 10 days of receiving that application, the Board of Supervisors has to take it up and vote it up or down. For two reasons, that's not very effective. Number one, the Board of Supervisors meeting schedule may not fit in with that 10-day requirement. And number two, 10 days really doesn't give a sufficient time for staff to review the potential impacts of that proposal. Specifically, the Sheriff's Office dealing with traffic management, the Health Department dealing with sanitation, Public Works dealing with adequate parking and access, and other related issues. The proposed amendment would stipulate that the application now would be made at least 60 days in advance of the proposed event. It would increase the number of participants from 25 to 100 before you have to get a permit. It would have a permit run through the Planning and Zoning Department for ultimate approval and would not necessarily involve the board. It would be more of an administrative review. But during that 60-day time period, again, we would coordinate with the Health Department, Sheriff's Office, Fire and Rescue, Public Works, and any other entity necessary in order to ensure that that proposed event will be safe and for the participants as well as the surrounding public. Again, they were required to submit it within 60 days before the event, and the county staff is supposed to approve it or deny it within that 60-day time period. If there is a denial, the applicant can appeal to the Board of Supervisors within 30 days of that decision. I'll be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Any questions? Okay. Thank you very much. Since the county is the applicant, we will go ahead and open the public hearing. Anybody in the chambers wishing to address the board on this topic will have an opportunity to do so. When you come to the podium, please state your name and address. The green light indicates you have 3 minutes. Yellow light is 1 minute. Red light means time has expired. I have no speaker cards. Anyone in the chambers wish to address the board on this topic? Hearing none, we will close the public hearing and bring it back to the board. This is countywide, so I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Okay, I think Mr. Milday is moving 016-09, and seconded by, let's see, who seconded that? Cavalier. Mr. Cavalier. Any discussion? Okay, please cast your votes. Tally the votes. That motion passes 7-0. Next on the agenda is number 18, Public Works. Amend and reordain County Code Section 17-3151, Other No-Wake Areas.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Christopher Rapp, Director of Public Works. Tonight we have a public hearing for an additional no-wake area on Echokeek Creek. The Department of Conservation and Recreation, DCR, is concerned with the safety of kayakers and canoeists when using the new boat launch at Crow's Nest Natural Area Preserve. DCR has requested a creation of a second no-wake area along Accokeek Creek. The proposed no-wake area would extend from the boundary line of the Crow's Nest Preserve to the end of the navigable waters. This is a location map of the proposed no-wake zone. It's demarked by the two dark arrows. You can see the beginning of it in the red dot, and then it proceeds westward. You have the canoe, the new canoe launch with the yellow dot, and then farther inland is the end of the navigable waters.
Mr. Mildy?
I just want, before you go away from it, I just want to make sure everyone knows what they're looking at. Of course, everything to the bottom is the Crow's Nest. Well, that's the most important part. And we'll get back to that in a minute. I want to talk about these dots, but go ahead and finish what you were saying.
And then there's an existing no-wake zone on the far right of the page with marked by the two blue dots.
Proposed no-wake zone goes from the left blue dot to the red dot?
No, it extends from the red dot where the arrow is leftward or westward to the
top of the creek where you can't really go much further.
Correct.
And so we're leaving this one little area without a no-wake zone in between the two.
Correct.
And just for fun, because I won't get a chance to show you guys this map, tell me where the Lynn Farm is. I think, if I'm not mistaken, do you know where the Lynn Farm is on this map?
No, sir.
Mike, it's right straight up from the blue dot, right?
I'm not.
No, you just say yes, and I'll point to it. Okay, Okay, so it's to the bottom right-hand side of the bottom blue dot. It's 120 acres, the biggest area of undeveloped land pretty much adjacent to the Crow's Nest, that just got purchased by someone who is intent on saving it from development. I think it's noteworthy. I wanted to show it to you since we're looking at a map of the area. Thanks, guys.
The proposed area would add approximately 1 mile of additional no-wake zone. A new piling, if it were approved, a new piling would be installed with a sign demarcating the second no-wake zone. There are no residences located within this proposed area of the creek. DCR desires the creation of this no-wake zone before April 2016, when boating activity will increase for the season. To create a no-wake area, an amendment would be needed to the Stafford County Code, Section 17-31.5. A public hearing is required. This public hearing has been advertised, and to date, we have not received any public comments. And staff recommends approval of the proposed ordinance 016-07, or 016-07.
By way of a little more background, we have had a few public comments. People don't live in that area. And there are some residences along the creek there, but certainly you have to go through that area to get to a couple others, for sure, several others on Main Street, and so we are definitely affecting a few people that are worried about that, like the Hummers, for instance. He's opposed to it. We had someone angrily calling the county building who sounds like they're opposed to it, but I just don't want you to think there's no one that's bothered by this. And I asked a question in subcommittee about this. I asked, because somehow this, Crow's Nest has survived not having no wake zones in this area for a long time, and a lot of these people have motorboats and piers, and they want to go up and down that area. I asked if we were allowed to have a no wake zone that says something like you see on street corners while kayaks or canoes or small water craft are present, some type of a no wake zone that only existed when you could possibly be interfering with or hitting a canoe or a kayaker. And did we ever get an answer?
I believe that we received an answer, and the answer was that that's not the typical signage that's installed.
I just wondered if it was possible.
There is someone from DCR that's present if you would like to consult with them.
Formerly of Stafford.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Michael Lott. I'm the Northern Region Steward with the Department of Conservation and Recreation, and my primary job responsibility is managing Crow's Nest Natural Area Preserve. Let me just talk a little bit about why we came to this. Since we opened up the canoe launch this last April, we've had, it looks like we're gonna have about 10,000 people a year visiting that site, of which maybe 1,000 to 2,000 are actual boaters. And we've had half a dozen complaints where users on canoeists or kayakers have been nearly run over by boats. That is really the reason why we're here. There are no residences located. Preston Hummer's house is downstream of where this no-wake zone would go, so it would affect him if he wanted to go upstream, but it would not if he wanted to go out into the Potomac River and go for a boat ride elsewise. The problem with putting up a sign that would say if boaters are there is there's no way for us to put up a sign that they would know they're there. You know, if they were, there's no way for us to have a sign like a green light that somebody's launched a canoe so that when they're coming upstream that they would know that they were there. This portion of the stream is very narrow, it's very windy. You got vegetation that's 6 feet tall in the summertime. It's just not an appropriate place for high-speed boaters. Now that this canoe launch is there, there's just too many other people out there. We'd only expect this to get more popular in the future as more people find out about it.
And let me just have this dialogue, and I'm just asking, because of course I have a jet ski and I have a small motorboat, and I go by no-wake zones all the time, and I can't stand them, especially in areas where there's nobody seems to be around, just like any other motorboater. And you can certainly, you look at the no-wake sign, and it says no wake, and it sometimes says a speed limit. There's all different ways you can, of course, notify people of the speed. It's not, there's an honor system there, just like if you want to call it that. You will get a ticket if they catch you speeding in a no-wake zone. So the enforceability or the fact that you may or how you might communicate it to the public, that wasn't even my question out of the committee. My question was, is it possible? The other thing is, just help me with this map then. I mean, I think I recognize my neighborhood. The Hummers live at the intersection of Marlboro Point Road and Brook Road.
You see the red dot on the map?
Right, so we've left them, because he complained, did he not speak to you too?
Yeah, if you actually look on the map, you can see.
I see it. Now, he's right at the red dot, or right to the right of the red dot.
Yeah, you can see the channel that goes up into his house right there.
Have we changed it to make him happy, or do you know where he stands on, do you happen to know better than I do?
He hasn't communicated since this came up. I mean, the original plan was to make it no wake from the entire way.
We had an option.
This was sort of a compromise solution, because this way it would not affect his house.
Good.
His ability to go downstream would not be affected.
All right. I'm satisfied with those questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, at this time we will open a public hearing. Anybody wishing to address the board on this topic will have an opportunity to do so. Come to the podium, please state your name and address. The green light indicates you have 3 minutes, yellow light is 1 minute, red light, your time has expired. I have no speaker cards. Is there anybody in the chambers that wishes to address the board on this topic? Hearing none, we will close the public hearing and bring it back to the board in the Aquia District. Mr. Mildy, what's your pleasure?
I will move approval.
Approval of 016-07, seconded by Ms. Sellers. Please cast your vote. Tally the vote. Motion passes 7-0. Okay, the last item is number 19, County Administration. Approve appointment of Brian A. Baxter to the Telecommunications Commission representing the Hartwood District. This is in the add-on folder, but I believe that commission is having a meeting Friday, and they are undertaking working on the franchise agreement. So it's of critical time importance that we go ahead and vote on this today. Mr. Snellings, do you have a motion?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for approval.
Seconded by Ms. Mauer. Is there any discussion on this? Okay, cast your votes. Tally the votes. Motion passes 7-0. No other business before us. The meeting is now adjourned.